Everyone in Changnam-based city saw a Tier 3 wall cleaner named Song Mu scrubbing beast guts off a wall. Nobody saw the Grandmaster that a man from the deep sky had crippled 18 years ago on the night he took my wife. Then the Father's Glory system woke in my ruined Dantian with one rule. My realm would always sit 4 major realms above my son's. The night that boy threw his first real punch, I came down through a school ceiling walking on air, and the men who had threatened him never finished their sentences. Quick request, hit like and subscribe so the next video reaches you. It is the only ask of the whole channel. But every fortune begins in a small room. Let me show you mine. The sun going down over Changnam-based city looks like a pool of old blood that never quite dissolves, smeared flat across alloy walls that climb into the clouds. Outside those walls is the wilderness, where the vicious beasts roar loud enough to shake dust off the plating. Inside is a steel jungle with a pecking order you can read off the patch on a man's sleeve. I am at the bottom of it, on my knees, with a rag in my hand that smells like something that died a week ago. Somebody shouts up the line, wanting to know why the corpse-devouring beast fluids in the wall seams still are not clean. I straighten a back that ought to stand like a spear and put on a smile I have worn so long it fits better than my own skin. I tell young Master Yang I am coming, that it will be ready in a moment. He is a clean young man in a brand new nano combat suit, and his name is Yang Gi. His uncle captains the 3rd Battalion of the city defense team, which makes Yang Gi the group leader for this stretch of wall. He covers his nose and kicks over the bucket of dirty water beside me with the toe of his boot. He tells me he has drinks lined up at Elysium tonight, so I will be taking his patrol. He says I am an old bachelor with nothing waiting at home, and that the overtime will buy medicine for that trash son of mine. My hands stop moving for exactly 1 heartbeat. Overtime pay. That money goes into his pocket and stays there, and if a tenth of it ever comes back to me, it is because he woke up generous. But refusing is not a door that exists in my life. Yang Gi is a fool with a captain for an uncle, and he is also an early-stage Chi and Blood Realm martial artist. I am a man who wipes beast guts out of masonry, so I lower my eyes, hide the thing that lives behind them, and bow. I tell him it is my honor, that he should go enjoy himself, and that not even a fly will get past this section of wall. He says at least I am sensible, then pats my oil-stained shoulder the way a man pats an obedient old dog. He tells me to work hard, and reminds me that a man with no strength accepts his fate. Then he walks off toward the maglev station, humming, headed for the bright part of the city. I watch him go. My spine straightens for 1 full second before the phantom pain flares out of my ruined Dantian and folds me back over. Accept my fate. Sure. I look at my hands, cracked and calloused and good for nothing but rags and shovels now. 20 years ago, one of them broke the top off a mountain, and I stopped saying that out loud a long time ago. Nobody here would believe the rest of it either, that the timid middle-aged man at the foot of the wall does not belong to this time or this space. I lived on Earth once, in a world that ran on machines instead of meridians. When I woke up in this high martial world, I still had my nerve, and the stubborn heart of a man who has already died once carried me to the Grandmaster realm in 20 years. A Grandmaster controls the air with a thought and kills with a plucked leaf. If I walked into Changnam-based city at that height today, the city lord would come down the steps himself to greet me. 18 years ago, all of it went up like paper in a fire. A man came down out of the deep starry sky to take my wife, and I stood in front of him. He broke my Dantian and snapped every meridian in my body with 1 casual palm. And then he said a single word to me. Ant. That was the whole of it. The Grandmaster of a generation became a cripple with nothing but the dregs of the late physical body realm. My wife was carried away and my newborn daughter went with her, and all that was left in the wreckage was me and a son still in swaddling clothes. I breathe out the bad air and pick up the rag again. No amount of thinking about it turns the clock back, and I still have a boy to raise. Midnight. The neon along the commercial strip shuts down block by block, and only the billboards over the wealthy district keep flashing at nobody. I drag myself back to the old tenement in the Sector F slums, where the air is sewer and cheap synthetic food, and the wiring hangs in the corridors and tangles. The door reader chirps and welcomes home Tier 3 resident Song Mu in a voice with no warmth in it. The rusty security door creaks open on 30 square meters of home. The furniture is a decade past its funeral, but the place is spotless, and every piece of it sits exactly where it belongs. I close the door quietly and open the ancient freezer that has followed the two of us for 10 years. 2 lunchboxes inside. My son left me dinner again. I put the food in the heating box and let the sizzle fill the quiet, then drop onto the sofa with the collapsed springs. Out of habit, I look up at the mottled white wall, which is the most luxurious thing we own. It is covered end to end with certificates going back to when Songwoo was small enough to carry. Merit student, first place in martial Dao theory, full marks in basic fist technique assessment. In the middle of all that paper hangs one yellowed photograph. A woman like carved jade leans into the arms of a young man who used to be me, and her eyes are gentle enough to melt ice 10,000 years old. Imwana, my wife. the noble daughter who carried the bloodline of the Starry Sky Divine clan. I tell her our son has grown up, and that Wuya is more promising than I ever was. This is the most relaxed I get all day, talking to a photograph in a dark room. He did not inherit her heaven-defying God-race talent, not fully, but among ordinary people the boy is a rare thing. 17 years old and already at physical body realm perfection, one step short of the chi and blood realm. He got there in a slum where the resources run out before the month does, on nothing but grinding himself down night after night. If he tests into a key martial arts university and reaches the innate realm, he can stand up straight in this world for the rest of his life. Next month's wages are already spoken for, because a black market dealer can get me an elementary chi and blood potion, and that potion breaks my son's bottleneck. The bedroom door clicks open. I put my tired face away fast and turn with something cheerful ready, asking Wuya why he is still awake, and whether he is hungry. The word dies in my mouth. He stands in the doorway under the dim light, tall and too thin, and he looks like me except for the fine grace around the brows that came from his mother. Tonight that face is black and blue from cheek to jaw. There is an uncleaned gash at the corner of his left eye and his lip is split. The Changnam First High School uniform hanging off him is torn through, with the cuffs caked in mud and blood. My hand closes on the arm of the sofa, and my nails go through the fabric. Something old and violent comes up out of my chest, and helplessness puts it out like a boot on a match. I ask him what happened, and whether it is that matter again, and my voice comes out hoarse no matter how hard I hold it. He does not answer right away. He limps over and stands across from me with his head down like a child caught breaking something. His eyes are bright, and the stubbornness in them has no business being in a face that young. He looks up and tells me it does not hurt, and the smile he tries pulls at his lip and makes him hiss. I take a breath and ask who did it. He tells me it was nothing, just a spar, and he keeps his eyes off mine while his fingers shake and sell him out. A spar. I know my son. He is not one of the golden children at Changnam First High School, but he can fight, and no ordinary student puts those marks on him. The only people who could beat him this thoroughly and leave him afraid to hit back are the children of the powerful. So I ask whether it is about the registration fee for the martial arts department entrance exam. His head snaps up. There is panic on his face for half a second before he sets his teeth and decides something. He tells me he is not taking the martial arts exam anymore. He says it with his head down and his voice barely above the hum of the heating box, and it goes off in that living room, like a thunderclap. I am on my feet before I know it, fast enough that my vision goes dark at the edges, and I ask him what he just said. He says it again, louder, with his eyes red and his voice thick. The spot was supposed to be his, and a boy named Wang Tae took it because his family handed the dean 100,000 won for a recommended admission slot. Wang Tae cornered him and promised that if he dared to register anyway, he would break his legs and see to it that I lost my job. The tears come loose then, and his fists are clenched hard enough to put his nails through his palms. He tells me he looked into it, that Wang Tae's uncle is a deputy commander of the city defense force, and that people like us cannot afford to offend people like them. The registration fee is 50,000 won, and he knows we do not have it, so he will go move bricks at a construction site instead. He is at physical body realm perfection, and strong, he says, and he can make decent money in a month. I hit him. The sound of it is very clear in that small room. He stares at me with his hand on his cheek, and no understanding on his face at all, and my hand stays up in the air shaking. 18 years, and I have never once struck my son. The slap landed on him, and the wound opened in me, like somebody carving out my soul with a paring knife. I roar at him not to talk nonsense, with the veins standing out in my neck and my eyes gone red. I tell him I put him through school and martial training so he could do more with his life than carry bricks. I tell him the money is not his problem, and that I will sell my blood and my kidneys before I let him quit. Then I say Wang Tae's name, and my voice drops, and the cold in it surprises even me. But my son's bruised face is right there in front of me, and the cold turns into something much worse. I tell him I will find a way, and that he should keep his mind on his martial arts, and that even if the sky falls, his father will hold it up. Then I go into the bedroom and shut the door, because I have aged 10 years in the last minute, and I do not want him watching it happen. I slide down the back of the door until I am sitting on the floor with both hands in my hair. Find a way. What way? Go put my crippled body in front of a deputy commander and demand justice, and they shoot me down a block out. Go beg the dean, and a man with no money and no power is not a person to those people at all. He is a line item. I let out a roar with no sound in it, while the tears run down a face that has been out in the wind 18 years. I tell my wife I have failed her, and I have failed our boy. Grandmaster, what a joke. I do not even have the standing to ask for an apology on my son's behalf. I lie down eventually, and my body gives out long before my mind does. In the dream, I am back in that night 18 years ago. Starships blot out the sun, and the man stands in the void realm and looks down at me the way you look at something on the pavement. A palm of light the size of a hillside comes down and takes my bones, my dignity, and the rest of my life with it. Even asleep, I cannot get a breath in. I am still fighting it soaked in cold sweat when something else moves. Down in the withered dead thing my Dantian became, a light flickers. It is faint, barely there, and it pulses in time with the angry breathing of a boy in the next room. Then a voice speaks in my head. It says intense emotional fluctuations have been detected from the host's offspring, Song Woo, and that the father's glory system is activating. I come up out of the nightmare with my heart slamming and my undershirt stuck to me. My eyes will not focus. That dream again, the one where a stranger deletes my life with one hand. I rub my temples and get ready to laugh at myself for finally cracking, because wanting to be strong long enough will do that to a man. Then the voice comes back, cold and mechanical, and this time it rings through me like a struck bell. It tells me that activation is successful, and that my bound offspring is Song Woo, currently at physical body realm great perfection. Then it lays out the rule that gives the whole thing its name. Under the Father's glory rule, the host's realm will always be 4 major realms higher than the offspring's. It says the host realm is synchronizing, and then it tells me my realm has increased to Great Grandmaster Great Perfection. Then the information comes down like water over a ledge. My son is practicing the Wild Bull Fist at minor achievement, so my Wild Bull Fist goes to perfection and the fist intent arrives with it. My son is circulating the basic chi-breaking formula and barely started, so mine goes to perfection and then keeps going, folding itself into something called the Primal Chaos 1 Chi technique. I sit on the bed and cannot move a muscle. Then the heat hits. It comes up out of that dead riverbed of a Dantian with no warning, and it is not a trickle. The whole heavenly river breaks its banks at once. I clamp my teeth on the noise trying to get out of my throat. It hurts the way a burn hurts, and underneath the hurt is a pleasure so enormous I nearly laugh into my hands. The Dantian that has been shattered for 18 years pulls itself back together, sealing and widening, turning into a sea of gold while I sit there like a spectator at my own resurrection. Then the meridians go. They have been withered and blocked and dead as kindling for most of my adult life. Now the golden energy runs through them and they snap taut like bowstrings drawn to their limit. The voice tells me physical body remolding is beginning. My skin goes red and starts pushing black filth out through the pores. My bones pop and my muscles take themselves apart and rebuild in a better order. The raw destructive force of it makes even me shake, and I have been a grandmaster before. 1 minute. That is all it takes, and then the violence settles into a slow warm current running everywhere at once. I sit in the dark with my shirt off, and when I open and close my eyes there is a flash in them like a real bolt of lightning. I raise my hand and look at a palm that was rough and scarred an hour ago. The old skin is gone, and what is underneath is as fine as a baby's and packed with something that badly wants to be used. I close my fist gently, and the air inside it is crushed flat and cracks like a whip. I laugh, quietly, and my eyes go hot doing it. 40 years since I woke up in this world, and 18 of them crippled. 18 years of being ordered around like a dog on a wall, of bowing and scraping for enough money to buy my son medicine. I assumed I would rot in the mud where I landed, and then the heavens finally bothered to open their eyes. A panel comes up in front of me, faintly blue and half transparent. It lists me as host, Song Mu, with the bound offspring Song Woo at physical body realm great perfection, and the host at Great Grandmaster Great Perfection. My cultivation technique is the Primal Chaos 1 Chi technique at perfection, evolved from the Chi breaking formula. My martial skills are the Wild Bull Fist at perfection with the fist intent birth, and leaf treading footwork at major achievement. Great Grandmaster. The realms in this world are a ladder with the rungs spaced very far apart. The physical body realm tempers skin and flesh and tendon and bone until a man can put out 1,000 pounds of force, and it is the floor everything else stands on. The chi and blood realm grows internal chi inside the body, nourishes the flesh with it, stretches a lifespan, and gives you the strength to lift a bronze tripod. The Anet realm opens the bridge between a man and the world and sends true chi out past the skin, which turns a fist into something that kills at 100 paces. The Grandmaster realm is where intent starts interfering with matter, where a man flies, where a thrown flower is a lethal weapon. That is where you stop being a citizen and become a privileged class, and my old ceiling was the middle stage of it. A Great Grandmaster stands above all of it. Missiles bounce off the body, true chi turns into a protective aura you wear like a coat, and one of them can hold a small bay city alone. In all of Changnan, the strongest man anybody knows about is the city lord, and rumor says he has only just put a hand on the threshold of that realm. I have not gotten out of bed yet, and I am already one of the deadliest things inside these walls. The judgment rule is the part that dries my mouth out. My son is in the physical body realm, the first rung, and it jumped me 4 rungs to Great Grandmaster the 5th. So if my son breaks into the chi and blood realm, the 2nd rung, I land on the 6th. The Martial King realm, a man who walks on air, all my boy has to do is try a little, and I ascend on the spot. They have a saying here about hoping your son becomes a dragon, and I always thought it was a figure of speech. This is not raising a child. This is raising a walking experience pack. A low grunt comes through the wall from the next room, then the flat sound of fists hitting a cheap sandbag. My senses are sharp enough now that the wall might as well be glass. He is in there in a pair of shorts, soaked through, that ruined face set hard, throwing the most basic wild bull fist over and over. Every punch pulls at his injuries and makes him wince, and he does not stop. He is talking to himself between breaths, telling Wang Tae he is not backing down, telling himself he has to get strong for his father and for the registration fee. Then he says that once he breaks into the Chi and Blood realm, he can sign up for the underground death matches and earn the money there. The underground death matches, where the survival odds are a rounding error. So this is what my son does at 3 in the morning. Not sleeping, working out how to sell his own life at the best available price. The wild joy drains out of me and leaves two things behind. A tenderness I have no words for and a killing intent cold enough to frost glass. I stand up, and the cheap floor tile under my feet turns to powder because a sliver of pressure got out of me without permission. I look down at the mess, breathe, and pull every trace of it back inside. Just like that, the world-breaking great-grandmaster is gone, and there is only a tired, middle-aged man in a slum bedroom again. Only I know that nothing about this is the same as it was yesterday. I open the window. The night air is cool and moves my hair around. I look through the dark at the center of the city, where the wealthy district glows all night for people who have never wondered where dinner was coming from. Wang Tae, and a deputy commander of the city defense force. I dig a bent cigarette stub out of my pocket and rub it between two fingers. No lighter. A thread of golden protective aura comes off my fingertip and lights it, and I pull the smoke in deep. In the swirl of it, my eyes have gone from cloudy to something with no bottom. I used to bow because I had one miserable life and needed to keep it in one piece long enough to raise a boy. That was the whole calculation. Somebody has now decided to break my son's legs, so I am going to break his bones first. I flick the butt out the window. It draws a red line through the dark, and where it lands, the concrete melts into a hole with nothing at the bottom of it. Time to sleep. Tomorrow morning I will take care of my son's deputy commander problem, on the way to other business. The city sings and dances all night the way it always does, and nobody up there spares a thought for one corner of the slums. 5:30 in the morning and Sector F is still under a thin gray mist. I sit at the wobbling wooden table with thin porridge, a saucer of pickles, and a few eggs in front of me. My son keeps his head down and puts food in his mouth without tasting any of it. The swelling on his cheek has gone down a little overnight, which only makes the bruising underneath look worse in daylight. I tell him to stop worrying about the exam registration, to put his whole mind on his training, and to leave the rest to his father. I keep my voice flat, and it still comes out as something that cannot be argued with. He stops with his chopsticks halfway up and looks at me. Something about me is different today, and he can feel it. My eyes are usually clouded from too many night shifts, and this morning they are deep and quiet and give him nothing back. He decides I am only trying to make him feel better, makes a small sound of agreement, and goes back to his eggs with that helpless determination still sitting in him. I stand, take my faded gray work jacket off the hook, and tell him I am leaving. Going over the threshold, my back does not bend. I hold the great grandmaster down as tight as I can, and every muscle still moves with the steadiness of a mountain that has decided to go for a walk. I have two jobs now. Hold the sky up over my son so he can keep climbing, and use whatever this is to find my wife and my daughter. The 6 o'clock commuter train grinds through the gaps in the steel forest. I come through the gate of the Sector F City Defense Management Office, and my senses tell me the mood in the yard is wrong before my eyes confirm it. The air is thick with fear. Normally at this hour, men are swapping shifts and complaining about the canteen, and today they stand in knots in the shade, talking low and watching the doors. Old Jang comes out of the crowd fast and grabs me. He is my partner on the squad. His face is a roadmap of every year he has spent in the wind and grit, and right now it is nothing but panic. He pulls me into an empty corner and asks whether I have heard, and I tell him no. He stamps his foot and gets the words out in a spray. Last night, a Shadowcat beast came into the base city through the stretch of wall we were guarding, went straight into the wealthy district, and killed the only son of a noble family. Some inner-city big shot's relative. The higher-ups are furious and want to turn the responsible defense line upside down until somebody falls out of it. I tell him I was on that stretch all night and not one brick came loose, so it has nothing to do with us. He slaps his own thigh and asks whether I really do not understand. Yang Gi handed me his shift, so on paper it was still Yang Gi's group on that wall. A noble is dead, Yang Gyeonmin will move heaven and earth to keep his nephew clean, and the easiest way to do that is to pin it on men with nobody standing behind them. Dereliction of duty, or concealing military intelligence, and either one of those is a capital charge. Before he finishes, the hall's broadcast system cuts across the yard with a voice like a closing door. All 3rd Battalion personnel on duty are to report to the briefing room immediately, and anyone who does not will answer to military law. Old Jang goes white and starts pulling at my sleeve, saying we need to get our story straight. I take his hand off my arm, gently, and look up at the top floors of the office building. I tell him to go on ahead because I have business of my own. He calls after me in a strangled whisper that the captain's office is the other way. I do not look back. The world changed last night, and I am done working as a punching bag. The captain's office door is shut, which does not matter because I can hear both men through it perfectly well. I do not knock. I push it open and walk in, and they both whip around. Yang Jian-min is behind the desk with the shift schedule in his hands and his face set like curdled milk. Yang Gi is folded into a chair, pale as paper, still wearing last night's nano combat suit with the smell of Elysium liquor in the collar. Yang Gi-an-min darkens the instant he sees me, slams his palm on the desk, and asks who let me in. I tell him I am here to resign. No preamble. There is not a scrap of humility left in my voice, and I look at him level, which is a thing he has never had to survive from me before. He blinks, then laughs out of pure anger, and something ugly moves behind his eyes. He asks whether I think his office is a wet market I can wander through. He reminds me that a beast infiltrated the defense zone last night, that a noble is dead, and that I was the one covering the shift. The word resign lands on Yang Gi like a rope thrown to a drowning man. He comes out of the chair, points at my nose, and starts shouting. He admits he had Old Song help him out for a bit, says that was only because he trusted me, and concludes that it must therefore be me. He says I let the beast in on purpose to frame him, to get back at him for holding my work to a high standard. He tells me I am cold-hearted enough to gamble the safety of the whole city just to set him up, and somewhere in the middle he talks himself into believing it. A nasty little pleasure spreads over his face. Then he calls me a lowly commoner, comes across the room with his hand up, and announces that he will cripple me first. I do not move. I do not even lift an eyelid. Through Great Grandmaster eyes, an early-stage chi and blood boy swinging his arm looks like a snail crossing a road. A ripple comes off me so faint that nobody in the room registers it as anything, and Yang Gi runs straight into it. He leaves the ground and goes into the filing cabinet hard enough to bring a season of paperwork down on top of him. He clutches his chest and asks whether I dared to hit back, and there is real terror in it now. Yang Gi-an-min is standing too. He is an innate realm master, and he did not see me do anything at all, and the alarm on his face says he knows what that means. He asks in a low voice whether I intend to resist the investigation. Resigning is off the table until the case closes, he says. If I confess now to a moment's negligence letting the beast slip through, he might spare my life out of respect for my years of service. Then he says otherwise, and leaves it hanging. I ask him what otherwise. He tells me slowly, savoring it, that my son Song Woo over at Changnam First High School might find himself unable to sit the martial arts college entrance exam. The son of a suspect, he explains, does not pass the background check. Everything in me goes very cold and very quiet. I can let ants slander me, because that costs nothing. Putting my son's future on the table as a chip is a different category of mistake. I advise Captain Yang to swallow those words back down, and I take one step forward. The air in the office turns over. Wind comes from nowhere and takes the papers off the desk, and the window glass groans like it has been asked to hold up a roof. Yang Jian-min feels something enormous and old looking directly at his heart, and his true chi stops circulating mid-stroke. He asks me who I am, with the sweat coming off his face in sheets, and his legs refusing to hold still. The internal phone rings and cuts the standoff in half. He picks it up with a shaking hand, and a voice on the other end tells him the inner-city inspection team is already at the gate. They intend to take away everyone directly responsible for last night's Sector F patrol, with particular interest in the team leader, Yang Gi. The handset slips out of his fingers and clatters onto the desk. He looks at his nephew, who has gone limp as wet laundry, and then at me, and I watch him arrive at his idea. He says that since I want to resign, he will sign it, but first I have to do one last thing for him. He tells me to go to the inspection team and take the fall, and promises me a sum of money I could not earn in a lifetime. It would be enough, he says, to send my son to a martial arts university in a big base city far from here. I look at him the way you look at an idiot who has walked into the same wall twice. I tell him that living at the bottom this long has clearly given all of you a delusion. Then I am standing in front of his nephew, and I snap both of the young man's legs while the uncle watches. The noise Yang Gi makes fills the room and does not seem to stop for a while. I walk over to Yang Gi-an-min and tell him there is no reason to stay in a city defense bureau this rotten. As for his inspection and his scapegoat, anyone who tries to stop me will die. Then I slap him across the face and tell him that since he had the nerve for this, I hope the commander he answers to is willing to protect that dog head of his. He hits the floor hard with his cheek burning, and I turn and walk out. The two heavy alloy doors of the squad office cannot handle the wake I leave behind, and they come down in the frame with a crash. Behind me, Yang Gi-an-min lies in his own sweat until he is sure the pressure is gone. Then he gets his breath back and lets the hate settle in. It does not matter how big a hidden expert I am, he tells the empty room, because this Changnam city is surnamed Wang and not Song. I can have my resignation, and I will not have anywhere to be buried. He stands, picks up the phone with an unsteady hand and dials. He says, "Hello, Lord Commander." A few minutes later, I am walking an empty street with a destination in mind. Sector D, the official residence of the Deputy Commander of the City Defense. Someone tried to cut the road out from under my son's feet, so I am going to put it back myself. The power players of Changnam used to sit so far above me that I could not make out their faces, and from where I stand this morning they are ants with unusually loud voices. A deputy commander is at best a freshly minted grandmaster whose chi and blood have not even been purified. Set that against a great grandmaster and he is no different from a man at the physical body realm. My heart is flat calm. I am not a killer by nature, and 20 years of sinking into obscurity ground the impatience out of me and left restraint at the bottom. If they show any sense at all, I have no interest in starting a massacre in the city where my son goes to school. Then, stepping onto the commercial strip at the edge of Sector D, I notice the people behind me. Back in the shadows, 5 figures in specialized form-fitting combat suits are talking fast over headsets. One of them reports that there is something wrong with this Song Mu. The records say he was a grandmaster once, and that an extraterrestrial powerhouse shattered his dantian and destroyed his meridians with a single palm, 20 years ago. Injuries like that do not heal even with the best restoration fluid Earth can produce. So by the file, the man should have nothing but leftover physical body realm muscle. Their captain is a cold-eyed young man, and his pupils have narrowed to pinpoints on my back. He says the man carries an aura he cannot describe. He probed with his own strength at the peak of the innate realm, and it felt like leaning over the lip of an abyss. And he asks whether they should pull back or move. The order comes down from above. Yang Yeonmin has filed a report accusing me of colluding with the Star Demon cult and tied last night's beast infiltration directly to me, so letting me walk would be impossible to explain. Keep following. Find somewhere deserted. I walk along at an easy pace and stop to look at a martial arts exam advertisement on a roadside holographic screen, like a man with nowhere to be. Their tailing technique is a children's game played by adults. I slow down on purpose and walk them through the neon until we all arrive together at an abandoned heavy machinery factory. The cranes have collapsed, the steel beams are going orange with rust, and the wind coming through it makes a noise like something dying slowly. I stop and turn around with the setting sun laying my shadow out behind me. I tell them they have followed me 3 blocks and must be tired, and that they should come out and get some sun. They emerge from the corners in a 5-pointed formation and close off every direction. The one in front is Han Bong, and the dark alloy long saber in his hand carries a blue light that would make most men reconsider their afternoon. He stares at me while the doubt in his eyes keeps thickening. He points out that the grandmaster of a generation is now a wall scrubber. Then he asks the real question, which is how a man with a ruined dantian threw Yang Gi across the city defense bureau. The only answer he can construct is the Star Demon cult's foul technique, the one that burns a man's own life force for power. That gets a real laugh out of me, the kind an elder gives a child who has said something confidently wrong. I tell him the Star Demon cult is a sideshow that trades souls for strength and is not worth my attention. Then I ask whether he believes every word out of Yang Jianmin's mouth, and whether that brain of his is in there for any reason besides adding to his height. One of the young women takes exception. She's the team scout and by some distance the proudest of them, and she goes from standing to moving like a bolt of green lightning. 2 daggers as thin as cicada wings come in at my eyes and my throat, and it is a full-strength strike from an innate realm expert. I do not raise a hand. When the points are less than an inch out, my body simply occupies a different position than it did. From inside her perception, I have turned into an afterimage, with no weight to it, and no matter how sharp her blade she gets, there is nothing there to cut. I tell her that taking a life without evidence is a style of work as rotten now as it ever was, and I let some cold into my eyes. Han Bong reads the footwork for what it is, and shouts for all of them at once. His saber comes out of the sheath trailing several meters of true chi light, and the rest of them throw punches like artillery or send hidden weapons coated in anesthetic toxin. The combined attack of 5 and 8 experts is genuinely enough to give a grandmaster a difficult afternoon. I walk through the middle of it the way a man walks through a garden. Anything about to touch me gets a slight lean of the shoulder or a flick of one finger, and mountain-heavy force goes somewhere else without complaint. Their strikes start landing on each other, and 2 of them plow into the dead machinery and blow it apart into a spray of sparks. My other hand never comes out of my pocket, and I know exactly what that looks like from the outside. Han Bong sheathes the saber and shouts for everyone to stop. He is drenched, his chest is heaving, and the way he looks at me is no longer suspicion. It is fear that has arrived at understanding. There is no evil technique here, only a difference in altitude, and if I really were a Star Demon cultist, then every neck in this yard would already be broken. He asks what realm I am, and his voice shakes doing it. I stand with my hands behind my back and look past all of them toward that residence over in Sector D. My realm does not matter, I tell him. Evidence is not a thing you invent on the way to work. Yang Gyeonmin wants a scapegoat, and this team volunteered to be the knife in his hand. Somewhere above them is a person comfortable enough to think a man can be deleted inside a base city with a phone call. If killing whoever you like is the rule here, I would like to know why the rule does not run both ways. That leaves 5 people standing in cold sweat. By then, I have already moved. My figure sways once and is gone. And a moment later, several members of the correction team feel a chill across the throat, and then they are not breathing anymore. Changnam First High School sits under a haze of martial arts and adolescence. In the corner of one classroom, Song Woo sits by himself while the noise of the break separates around him like water around a stone. He keeps his head down and holds a copy of Basic Inner Chi Guidance with the edges worn soft. There is one word in his head: endure. Endure until the exam. Get out of the slums, and every humiliation before that goes off with the wind. A voice like a bird lands next to him and asks what happened to his face, and he does not need to look up to know. Seo Rara is the beauty of Changnam First High School, standing over him in the light blue uniform skirt with her high ponytail swaying. She throws off the kind of clean spiritual energy that rearranges an entire hallway around her. He tells her he was not careful walking and he fell, keeping his voice low to build distance. Her brows come down and her pretty face goes cold. She asks who falls and comes up with finger marks, and whether Wang Tae brought people to corner him again. He does not answer and he turns his back. She says that boy thinks he can do anything he likes because his family has connections in the city defense force. She is going to go confront him, she says, because she refuses to believe this school has no rules. His head comes up fast and he catches her wrist with panic all over him. He tells her not to go because Wang Tae will have his father fired, and his father has worked at that job for 18 years, and it is his lifeline. She looks at the swelling on his face and the dried blood at the corner of his eye, and something in her chest aches. She bites her lip with her eyes going red and asks what it matters if the man loses that job. She asks whether he is really going to let this go on, and says that if it comes to it, she will beg her own father. He lets go of her hand slowly and tells her that from now on she should stay away from him. His voice does not have a single warm thing in it, and he says someone like him does not deserve to stand next to her. She calls him a blockhead, stamps her foot with tears standing in her eyes, and goes back to her seat at a half run. In the front row, a yellow-haired boy watches all of it, laughs to himself, and gets his phone out. He types that Song Woo is hitting on Rara again, that he even held her hand, and sends it to Brother Tae. The second theory class is not finished before Song Woo is called out of the room. Martial arts room number 2 sits at the far end of campus, and has more surveillance blind spots than any other room in the building. The heavy alloy door slams behind him, and 5 thick-shouldered students are already spread out waiting. The management teacher on duty is sitting off to one side with his tea, and he lifts his eyelids, sees who is leading, puts on his headphones, and turns his chair around. Wang Tae is in a designer fighting suit, working his knuckles until they crack. He is at physical body realm great perfection like Song Woo. He has also been soaking in expensive potions since he was old enough to swallow, so his chi and blood run far thicker than any ordinary student's. He asks whether Song Woo has learned nothing, says he gave clear instructions about going near Seorara, and asks whether his words are just wind in this boy's ears. Then he slaps him across the face without warning. Song Woo's head snaps to the side and his mouth fills with salt and iron. He locks his teeth and does not move. Wang Tae takes a fistful of his hair, grins into his face, and tells him that when he gets home, he will have his uncle issue a dismissal order for that useless father of his. Dereliction of duty stamped on the file, he says, so the man can rot in a cell for whatever is left of his life. Dismissal and prison, and those 2 words go into Song Woo like needles. That is his father. The man who has bent his back under a city wall for 18 years for no reason except him. Something comes up out of his throat that is closer to a growl than a sentence, telling Wang Tae not to touch his dad. Wang Tae asks what he intends to do about it, says trash who cannot cover a registration fee should not be talking about fighting anybody, and pulls his fist back for the boy's face. In that half second, a violent heat comes roaring up out of a dantian that has been silent Song Woo's entire life. It has been filling for more than a decade behind a wall nobody could see. And the wall is gone now. The air in the room thickens. Gold flashes deep in the boy's eyes, and the body that malnutrition kept thin starts contracting in hard rhythmic waves. A faint red steam rises off his skin. A calloused hand comes up, catches Wang Tae's punch, and holds it perfectly still. Wang Tae's fist has gone into something like black ice 10,000 years old, and no amount of effort moves it a hair. Then he feels the aura climbing off Song Woo, straight up through the ceiling of the physical body realm, and the pressure makes breathing difficult. He says it out loud, that this is the chi and blood realm, and then he says that it is impossible. Song Woo tells him again not to touch his dad, and his voice has gone hoarse enough to carry the rhythm of something old and enormous. He steps in half a pace, pulls his back taut like a drawn bow, lines up his waist and hips, and throws the most basic wild bull fist there is. Somewhere in the air, a dragon and an elephant trumpet together, low and long. Wang Tae leaves the ground like a shell out of a gun and hits the reinforced wall on the far side. He does not have time to scream, and his eyes roll back as he slides down into a heap, and whether he is alive is not immediately obvious. The lackeys manage a few broken syllables and then run for the door, because the visible cyclone turning around Song-woo has taken all the fight out of them at once. The management teacher's teacup shatters in his hand. He tears the headphones off, points and screams about rebellion, and says that if young Master Wang is hurt, 10 lives would not be enough to pay for it. Song-woo stands in the middle of the room looking at his own hands. His body is full of power that has nowhere to go, and as his reason comes back, the fear arrives with it. He broke through, and he also crippled the nephew of a deputy commander. He says quietly that he has caused trouble for his dad. Half a city away, on a street in Sector D, my foot comes down a fraction wrong. The system tells me the offspring Song-woo has broken through in battle and advanced to the early stage of the Qi and Blood realm. Under the Father's Glory judgment, it says, the offspring's realm has improved and the host is synchronized and improved. Current offspring realm, Qi and Blood realm, Tier 2. Host realm, Martial King realm, Tier 6. Early stage. The golden Qi and blood inside me detonates, and the concrete under my shoes cracks without a sound, the fissures running out several meters before they stop. I go still in the middle of the street, and in my eyes the black is replaced for an instant by purple and gold. Then I stop hiding and stop lying dormant. Early stage Martial King pressure comes off me like weather, and behind me the rusted frames of the abandoned factory groan once under the weight of it and fold. I push off the ground, and the rest of me turns into a streak of purple lightning going through the sky. Walking on air, shrinking the earth to a single step. This is a Martial King, a man who has climbed out past the mundane and can argue with gravity using nothing but his own body. Back at Cheongnam First High School, the tension in the building finally breaks. Urgent knocking interrupts a lesson, and the dean's face appears in the doorway, usually slick and pleased with itself, and now white with terror. He waves the homeroom teacher out without a word of courtesy, and the classroom erupts behind him. Somebody says the dean looks like he has seen a ghost, and somebody else notices that Song-woo's seat is empty, and that Wang Tae's group called him out earlier. Seo Rara's nails go into her palms. She knows exactly what Wang Tae is, a spoiled tyrant with a deputy commander for an uncle, and no limit anyone has ever found. The anxiety takes her out of her chair and down the hall at a run toward martial arts room number 2. She shoves the heavy door open and the room takes her breath away. Wang Tae is on the floor unconscious like a dead dog, and the boys who swaggered through this school for years are shaking in the corner and trying not to breathe loudly. And Song-woo, the quiet boy who has spent his whole life folded a little smaller than he is, stands in the middle of the arena floor. She screams his name and runs to him. The dean arrives right behind her, sees Wang Tae on the ground, and nearly comes apart. He points a trembling finger and demands to know how Song-woo dared commit violence on school grounds. He asks whether the boy understands who Wang Tae is, and tells him he has poked a hole in the sky. The homeroom teacher, horrified, asks what on earth is going on. Song-woo turns his head slowly. His eyes are hollow, and the stubbornness in them is the sort that breaks a person's heart, and his voice is barely working. He says the boy told him he was going to put his father in prison and come after his father. He could not let anyone hurt his dad, he says, and he never will. The dean stamps his foot and calls him a fool. It does not matter what the boy said, he says, because hitting him only makes that useless father die faster, and Deputy Commander Vamos can crush the two of them like ants. That is when brakes shriek outside and boots come down the corridor at speed. A middle-aged couple comes through the door carrying killing intent like a smell. The woman screams for Tae and throws herself down beside her son. The man is in a refined black combat suit with eyes like a snake behind glass, and he is Wang Heng of the Wang family, and Wang Tae's father. The air stops moving the moment he sees the state of his only child. He asks who did it, and his voice comes out low and dragging, like sandpaper caught in the throat, with a chill of qi and blood in every word. The dean scurries over like a lapdog and points at Song-woo. This is the bastard from the slums, he explains, who must have taken some forbidden medicine, who went mad and attacked young Master Wang Tae, and whom nobody could stop. Wang Heng laughs, because his rage has run past the point where shouting works. A middle-stage qi and blood aura comes off him and presses the surrounding students down until they cannot fill their lungs. Nobody in Cheongnam City has ever dared beat his son like this, he says, and he promises to take the boy apart bone by bone. Seo Rara throws both arms out and puts herself in front of Song-woo. Her eyes are red and she is shouting that Wang Heng cannot simply refuse to be reasonable. He snorts. In Cheongnam City, he tells her his Wang family is what reasonable means, and then he tells her to get lost. A casual wave of his hand turns hidden force into a visible wave of air, and it picks the girl up and throws her. Song-woo is already moving. He crosses the room like a thrown blade and catches her out of the air, steady, before she comes down. And then the gold in his eyes opens all the way. The qi and blood the breakthrough ate should be gone, and instead it comes back like a second spring and roars through him. a pressure that does not belong in a boy that thin fills the space around him. He sets Seorara down gently, straightens, and turns to face a middle-stage powerhouse. He asks whether the man wants to go after his father and put a hand on her too, and he asks it calmly enough to raise the hair on every neck in the room. Wang Heng roars and comes at him like a tiger down a slope, right hand hooked into a claw, the sonic boom arriving before the arm does, aimed at the boy's throat. There is nothing in the strike but intent to kill, and the fact that his target is a student does not slow it by a fraction. The teachers close their eyes, but Song Mu's senses have stepped into somewhere strange and quiet, and Wang Heng's lightning is full of holes when you look at it from in there. He does not block. He drops low, practically skating across the floor under the claw, and comes up inside the man's guard. The power starts in the soles of his feet, runs the length of his spine, and arrives in his right palm. It comes wrapped in a light that alternates gold and red, which is what pure chi and blood looks like when it burns. The palm lands flat on Wang Heng's lower abdomen. The sound that fills the hall is not flesh hitting flesh. It is two 10,000-pound iron ingots meeting. Wang Heng's face stops working. Something overbearing and completely unreasonable goes into his dantian like a poisonous dragon and takes his chi and blood defense apart on the way in. He leaves the ground like a sack of rags, goes through an entire row of testing equipment, lands on one knee, and brings up a mouthful of blood with pieces of himself in it. The room goes dead silent, and the dean's mouth is open wide enough to park a fist in. Wang Heng clutches his stomach and says this is impossible, that the boy only just broke through, that there is no way he could be hurt by him. Songwoo is breathing hard and the sweat is coming off in his white steam. He repelled the man, and challenging that far above his rank has taken him nearly to the end of what his body has. Shame and rage finish what the pain started, and Wang Heng reaches into his robe and comes out with a miniature high-pressure vibrating short blade. And the ceiling comes apart. The massive alloy beams snap like dry sticks and the rebar twists with a groan that sets teeth on edge. Dust and debris pour down through the hole, and the sunlight coming with it makes one enormous pillar of light straight down onto the center of the hall. Standing in the middle of that light, with nothing under his feet, is a man in a faded gray work uniform that at this moment looks better on him than a dragon robe. Purple gold chi and blood moves around me slowly, thick enough to have edges. Martial King Realm, walking on air, the physical body stepping into the void. This is the mark of leaving the mundane behind and moving up a level of life itself. The pressure that fills the hall is 10,000 mountains arriving at once. Everyone in the room goes down on their knees. The dean, the homeroom teacher, every student in the doorway, and none of them chose it. It is a thing that happens in the genes when a lower form of life is looked at by a higher one. The only person still standing is my son, because the pressure goes around him and holds him gently. The center of it lands on Wang Heng. Whatever dignity a chi and blood powerhouse is supposed to have, there is none of it left down there. He is spread flat against the cracked floor like something pinned out for study. His bones creak, his face is being squeezed out of shape, and his eyes bulge as he stares up at the thing standing in the air. He gets out a broken, wheezing question about walking on air, and then the malice in his face turns entirely into horror. He asks when Changnam Bay City acquired a martial king. In a city where a grandmaster is a legend told at dinner parties, a martial king is the sky. I lower my head and look at him with the mild disinterest a man has for an insect on a windowsill. Then my son says the word dad, and his voice cracks on it, and his eyes go red. That one word goes through the room like a hammer through glass. Seorara, on her knees, fights her head up and stares. The dean starts shaking so hard he cannot stand. The father who guards the city walls is this, and an hour ago he was mocking a martial king's son for not affording a registration fee. His vision swims and he would very much like to faint. I come down until I am hanging 3 inches off the floor, and I tell Wang Heng that touching my son takes a kind of nerve I did not think existed anymore. He hears the killing intent land and starts begging. He calls it a mistake and a misunderstanding, swears he did not know the boy was my young master, and insists he would not have dared with 10,000 times the courage. Then he starts to explain that he is of the Wang family and that his brother-in-law is the deputy commander of the city defense force. I stop listening around the word misunderstanding. I lift my right foot and put it down again, about as carefully as a man stubbing out a cigarette. The sound is a watermelon meeting a sledgehammer. Wang Heng's head and the rest of his sentence go out into the air together as red mist, and the body twitches twice and gives up. Some of it lands on the face of the middle-aged woman kneeling beside her son, and the warmth of it brings her out of her shock. She starts screaming and does not stop, crawling backward on her hands and heels with her expensive dress soaking through, telling me I killed him as though this were information. I turn and start walking toward her, and my boots leave clean red prints on the broken tile. She tells me her brother is Vamos, deputy commander of the city defense force, and that I have killed a man of the Wang family and he will never let me go. The city lord will not either, she says. She throws every name she has at me in one breath. The way you throw furniture at a fire. My stride does not change. I ask her whether a deputy commander is meant to be impressive. Then I tell her she leaned on her brother's power and let her son bully his classmates for years, and that today the bill came due. I raise my right hand, and the purple gold gathers in my palm until the air above it warps from the heat. She shuts her eyes and screams, and the doors at the end of the hall blow off their frame. A man in silver commander's armor comes through the gap like a cannonball, broad-faced and imposing, his chi banked and roaring like a furnace. This is Vamos, deputy commander of the city defense force, who came the moment the news reached him. He takes in his brother-in-law's headless body and his sister under my hand, and nearly splits at the seams. He cannot read my realm at all, but underneath that he simply believes nobody in Changnam Bay City would kill in front of him. It does not matter who I am, he tells me. Murdering nobility openly inside a school is a challenge to the laws of this entire city. Then he draws the alloy battle saber at his hip, points it at me, lets his grandmaster pressure out, and orders me to kneel and surrender. I turn my head and look at the big man who has run all this way to die, and I let him see that he is boring me. Laws, I say, and then I laugh at him. I ask him where the laws were when his family was beating my son, and where they were when they bought his exam spot out from under him. Then I ask why he would like to discuss laws with me now. I am not standing where I was. Vamos's eyes have not caught up, and the man who was 10 meters away is directly under his nose, and the martial king aura at that range freezes the soul in him. His pupils shrink to pinholes and he never gets the saber up, because every stiff muscle in his body has already told him the truth about the distance between us. I tell him that in his next life he should keep his family on a shorter leash. My hand closes on his head like a pair of steel pincers. No speech, no hesitation. It is not much different from crushing a soft tomato. The deputy commander of Changnam Bay City, a man who has held more lives than he could count, never gets out a sound before his head is gone. The body sways and drops, and the battle saber rings once on the floor. I shake my hand off the way you shake off something unpleasant. You could hear a pin land. Sio Rara has both hands over her mouth, and the dean's eyes roll back as he goes down. Standing in the middle of that, I feel about half of 18 years come out of me. I am angry today. With 2 lifetimes behind me, I can absorb a great deal, step back from most things, and laugh off the rest. But of everything they could have chosen, they chose my son. I turn toward Wang Tai's mother, who has fainted and lost control of her bladder, and the killing intent has not gone anywhere. Then my eyes move to the dean shivering in the corner. A voice arrives before its owner does, thick and long as a wave, asking the senior to stay his hand. My palm stops in the air. I turn my head toward the entrance, where light and shadow are bending around something. An old man walks out of the dust in a dark high-collared jacket, white in the hair and the beard. He appears to totter, except that the gravel under each step turns quietly to powder. Early-stage great-grandmaster, the highest authority in Changnam Bay City, and his name is Ban Hong. On any other day, this is a man who lives above the clouds and looks down on everything under them, the guardian spirit of this steel jungle. Right now there is a fine sweat across his forehead, and my martial king pressure has bent that straight old back into something humbler. He introduces himself as the city lord of Changnam Base, comes a few steps closer, and stops 10 meters out, on a line he can feel without anyone drawing it. He looks at the 2 headless bodies and his eye twitches, and then he takes a breath and bows deeply. He says with real respect that he knows something of today's events, and that it is truly all a misunderstanding. I roll that word around and hand it back to him with a little curl at the corner of my mouth. He braces and keeps going. The Wang family have indeed been arrogant and domineering on the strength of their military merits, he admits. As city lord, he has been consumed by defense affairs, and he bears responsibility for supervising the subordinate families poorly. The chief offenders, Wang Heng and Vamos, have now been executed and received exactly what they earned. Then he says the remaining woman, the child, and the student are not guilty enough to die, and asks whether I might set my anger aside for the sake of his humble face. It is beautifully done. He gives me every inch of face he has while quietly trying to shrink 2 corpses into a paperwork problem. So I throw my head back and laugh at the ceiling. What a misunderstanding. What poor supervision. What a fine line between guilty and guilty enough to die. The laugh stops all at once, and my finger comes up and points like a blade at my son. I tell Ban Hong to open his dog eyes and look. I ask where he was 10 minutes ago when Wang Hung was reaching for that boy's throat, and what would have happened if I did not have the strength of a martial king. I ask where his misunderstanding was when Vamos stood in this hall with a blade out, prepared to execute me on the spot. Then I ask the only question that matters. If the 2 bodies on this floor today were mine and my son's, would he have walked in here and called it a misunderstanding? Or would he have signed a closing report calling us rioters who had it coming? Ban Hong goes the color of paper. He opens his mouth and nothing comes out of it, because it is true and both of us know it. That is the hidden rule of this world. The strong get respected and the weak get processed. I tell him that since he and his kind wrote the rules, he can hardly complain when I stop following them. The purple gold in my eyes surges, and I push the pressure harder, and this time it is not spread across the room. It comes down precisely on 3 people: Wang Tae's mother, Wang Tae, and the dean who lost his mind some minutes ago. The screaming goes straight up through the hole in the roof. The woman on the floor feels an entire divine mountain settle onto her back. Her bones snap in a fast dry sequence. Her well-maintained face turns the color of pig liver, and blood comes out of her mouth and her nose while she is pressed flat like something spilled. Her eyes roll, and she is putting out more air than she takes in. Wang Tae has it worse. Under that weight, the organs my son already ruptured finish tearing, and he convulses in a spreading pool with his features screwed into a knot. There is no resentment left in the way he looks at me, only a request for it to be over. The dean has beaten his own forehead into a bloody mess. He begs me to spare him, says he has old parents and young children, and asks me to treat him like a bad smell and let him go. Ban Hong's face is doing something complicated. He is a grandmaster, and it has been a very long time since anyone ignored him this thoroughly. He also does not move a muscle, because the gap between a martial king and a grandmaster is not a step but a canyon, and killing him would take me about 2 moves. He swallows the humiliation whole, and his voice turns urgent. He is not trying to stop my revenge, he says. The problem is that this Wang family is not simple. He comes 1 step closer and drops into something between a warning and a plea. The Wang family is only a household in Changnam City, but the main branch sits in Hanam Great Base City. Rumor puts an old ancestor of theirs high in the military, with ties to powerhouses at war god rank. With Wang Hung and Vamos already dead, they will be furious, and if I finish the widow and the boy today, the matter becomes unfixable. What comes next is worse, experts, or a federal warrant with my name on it. Then he glances at my face and plays the only card he has left. With divine skills like mine, I have nothing to fear, he says, and then he asks about my son. The boy is young. Is a life of running, of never being able to attend an ordinary martial arts university, what the senior wants for him. I sneer at that, on the inside where he cannot see it. This man leans on other people's power exactly the way the Wangs did. They touched my son, so they die regardless, but there is no reason not to bleed him a little on the way through. So I look at him like an opening blade, and ask whether he is trying to press me with the Federation or with the Wang family, and whether he honestly believes either. 1 frightens me. Then my tone shifts, and the pressure about to squeeze the last breath out of 3 people eases a fraction. If he wants me to spare these dog lives, that is fine. I point at the mother and son lying there like roadkill, and then at him. He is so eager to protect them because he fears the Wang main branch will blame him, and a blot like that would cost him his record and his career. Since it is his position on the table, he can be the one who bleeds for it. Ban Hong stares, and then he is nearly happy. As long as there is a conversation, there is no dead end. Strong as I am, I clearly still run on reason. To a powerhouse, killing a few ants is a poor way to work off anger, and trading them for hard resources is simply better business. He tells me to rest assured, fast, before I can change my mind. He offers to stand as guarantor personally, and says that on behalf of the City Lord's office and the Wang family, he will provide an apology gift that satisfies me. 100 million federal credits, a detached manor in a core area of Sector A. Then he grinds his teeth and adds 3 vials of B-rank chi blood fluid and 1 high-tier martial skill. Around the hall, everyone still conscious pulls in a breath. 100 million federal credits is enough for a wealthy household in Changnam to waste through several generations. B-rank chi blood fluid is effectively unbuyable here, and high-tier martial skills are secret manuals that only core disciples of great families ever get to read. I ask him coldly whether that is all. The sweat comes off his forehead in a sheet. It is the limit of the liquid funds he can move inside Changnam City, he says, and then he throws in a full waiver on the repair costs for martial arts rune number 2. Finally, he offers to personally approve a guaranteed admission slot at a martial arts university for the student Song Woo. That last one makes me smile, and it is not a nice smile. I tell him to keep the guaranteed slot because my son will test into the best martial arts university in the country on his own. I wave my hand the way you wave off flies, and tell him I will spare their dog lives this once. Then I add 1 word. However, I look at the dean, who peed himself some time ago, and flick a finger. A thread of purple gold wind crosses the hall and goes through his dantian, and the noise he makes is not really a scream so much as an ending. The death penalty is waived and the living penalty is not, I tell him. A man that's snobbish has no business in front of children. His cultivation is gone, and he can get out of the education sector. Then I let the martial king pressure go out like a tide, and the god of slaughter goes with it. What is left is a father crossing a room with his face full of worry. I get to my son and look at the blood on him and the cuts on him, and my chest hurts, because the Wang family did not hold back on a 17-year-old. And then I put another wave of pressure down, much heavier than the last, and crush Wang Tae and his mother into the floor until they are dead. Ban Hong makes a sound. We had an agreement roughly 90 seconds ago, and the whole hall stares, because nobody expected the face to turn that fast. I tell him, without looking around, that I have killed them and I still want the promise. He has nothing, and there is nothing he can do, because the man across from him is stronger and flies. I reach out and put a gentle current of purple gold chi and blood into my son, and it settles his churning meridians. He feels the warmth go through him and looks up at a father who is familiar and completely unrecognizable at once, and his eyes go hot. He shakes his head and tells me he is fine, that it is all surface damage. I laugh out loud and clap him on the shoulder hard enough to rock him, and tell him he has spirit, as expected of my seed. Then I turn to the girl standing nearby, disheveled and stubbornly upright, and thank her for protecting my wuya today. I promise that this boy will buy her a meal one of these days. Being addressed by a martial king uncle turns Siorara red from her hairline to her collar, and she stammers out that there is no need to thank her. I put an arm around my son's shoulders and tell him we are going home, and that the two of us are having a drink today. The light outside is good. We walk out of the campus side by side, and the old streets are as loud as they always are. And inside the two of us, nothing is where it was this morning. He keeps stealing looks at me. The face has not changed, and the lazy expression has come back. And somehow, to him, I have turned into a mountain. At the mouth of a deserted alley, he finally asks, "How did I suddenly become a martial king?" He remembers me as a grandmaster when he was small, and he remembers the injuries, and he says, his head is full of question marks. Healing the wound would already be far-fetched, he says, and jumping several realms on top of it does not happen even in novels. I stop walking, fish a flattened cigarette out of my pocket, and light it off a thread of golden flame at my fingertip. The truth is too strange, and explaining a system to a 17-year-old is a project, so I lie to him with a straight face, with about 70% real feeling in it, which is the best kind of lie. His old man never actually gave up over these 10-odd years, I tell him. The injury was heavy, and it also gave me a chance to break down and rebuild. Wiping blood off a city wall and hauling bricks on construction sites looked like scraping by, and it was really tempering the heart in the mortal world. I have been waiting on a turning point that had been piling up a long time. Then I reach out and straighten his crooked collar. Maybe it was what he did today, I say. Maybe that finished my state of mind, and the shackles of a decade shattered. He listens with his blood coming up and his eyes going wet, and he gets one word out and stops. I rub his head and tell him grown men do not cry over this, and that some things do not need examining. He only needs to know one thing. From today, in Changnam Bay City, and in this entire federation, nobody bullies the two of us. Then I look up at the part of the sky that has stars behind the daylight, and I feel the cold come into my eyes. Since I have recovered and gone a step further, some old debts ought to get settled. I tell him to cultivate. When he tests into Seoul Martial Arts University and reaches the Martial King realm, the two of us are going into the deep starry sky. He asks what for, and his heart is already hammering. I put the cigarette out and tell him we are going to bring his mother home. The setting sun pulls our shadows out long across the alley mouth. My son closes both fists and says one word, and he says it loud. Yang Yeonmin did not slip my mind either. I made a stop at the City Defense Management Office on the way, and handled him in passing. The next morning the sunlight does not smell like Sector F dust. It comes through floor-to-ceiling glass and lies across polished marble that reflects the whole room back at itself. Changnam Bay City, Sector A, Unjong Manor. This is the core of the Bay City, where the ground is worth its weight in metal, and every resident is either rich or connected. The top-floor detached villa marked a 001 has a new owner as of last night. I put in for 3 days of leave for my son, because after yesterday the boy needs time to sit down and let the world finish rearranging itself. He is standing in the middle of a living room that runs at least 200 square meters, holding a beat-up photo frame looking like a guest who arrived at the wrong address. There is a carpet under his feet woven from the hide of something nobody has told him the name of. A crystal chandelier hangs over his head, and a holographic home system quietly adjusts the temperature and the humidity around him. Yesterday, we lived in 30 square meters where the wind came through the window frames and the plaster came off the walls and sheets. He asks me whether this is really our home. I am in a loose training suit, turning the manor keycard over in my fingers. The one Ban Hong had couriered across the city before breakfast. I toss the little magnetic card that represents the highest access in Sector A onto the coffee table, and walk over grinning. I tell him not to let it scare him, because this is only the start. We will live in places 10 times this size, 100 times this size, and eventually, somewhere out in the starry sky. He blinks and then nods hard. A week ago, he would have decided his father was bragging. After watching a god come down through a ceiling yesterday, he is past arguing. If I told him I had rolled the sun into a ball on a slow afternoon, he would ask me how long it took. We did not bring much. There was nothing in that slum apartment worth carrying out except memory. So we brought some old clothes and one thing that mattered, an old iron box full of photographs of his mother. We spend the morning setting those frames into corners of the new place, and when her gentle smile is up on the walls, the enormous cold house finally has something living in it. He wipes his forehead, drops onto the leather sofa, and takes a long pull from a bottle of specially supplied blue algae nutrient water. 5 federal credits a bottle. Until yesterday, he had only ever seen it in advertisements, and this morning it is what comes out of the fridge when you are thirsty. Then he puts the bottle down, and his face turns serious and confused at the same time. I am in the middle of calibrating the gravity training room, and I come out when I hear it. He tells me that back in the martial arts room, his own condition felt wrong the whole time. He looks at his hands while he says it. He read that a man who has just entered the chi and blood realm carries chi and blood as thin and unstable as mist. Wang Hang at the middle stage should have had it condensed like water. By the book, his punch should have landed and hurt a little and done nothing else. It certainly should not have gone through the man's protective true chi and thrown him across a room. And he says that in that instant there was a vortex inside him, and the air around him was drilling into his body to feed it. The more he describes it, the less sense it makes to him. My eyes narrow because I have been chewing on the same thing. People say a tiger father does not raise a dog son, and yesterday was not a boy punching above his weight. It was closer to demolition. I tell him to come sit down, to settle his mind and even out his breathing, and not to resist. He folds down onto the carpet cross-legged and shuts his eyes. I put my right hand flat on his back and send in a thread of martial king chi and blood, gentle and as pure as I can make it. The inside of my son opens up in my mind like a lit room. The first look stops me. In an ordinary early-stage chi and blood martial artist, the chi and blood should run like a shallow brook, thin and unhurried. What is moving inside my son is dark red and viscous and heavy as mercury. The total volume really is early stage, and the density and the quality are past the late stage of the realm entirely. His meridians are wide, and his bones have a faint jade color under the surface, and I have no idea where a boy in a slum apartment got a foundation like this. I steer that thread deeper, meaning to go down into the dantian, and look, and the whole mass wakes up. His dantian spins. It stops being an organ and becomes a black vortex with no floor in it, and the chi and blood I sent in gets pulled apart and swallowed in an instant. Then the suction runs up the contact and starts trying to strip my own. I cut the thread and pull my palm back at the speed of a reflex, with the full weight of martial king cultivation behind it. Even so, the counterforce moves me back half a step. My son's whole body jumps and his eyes come open. He is not hurt. He felt a warm current go everywhere at once. The soreness from moving furniture is simply gone, and his chi and blood have come out of it slightly stronger than they went in. He sees me retreat and asks what happened, and whether there is something wrong with him. I do not answer because the system has come back and it is not being quiet about it. It tells me a qualitative change has been detected in the offspring Songwoo's chi and blood, and then it congratulates me. The offspring Songwoo has successfully awakened a hidden physique, the chaos body. Then it explains what that is, and I stop breathing for a second. The chaos body is one of the top physiques between heaven and earth. It puts no attribute restriction on its owner's chi and blood and lets him devour any energy and make it his own. It is invincible within its own realm. Crossing stages is about as difficult as drinking water, and it starts with a chi and blood concentration 10 times an ordinary person's. Then it tells me that under the Father's glory rule, since the offspring has awakened a physique, the host receives an advanced version as feedback. Congratulations, it says. I have obtained the supreme chaos body. Something detonates inside me. The purple gold chi and blood that has been running my body collapses inward and compresses, and comes back out the other side in indescribable color, the hazy gray of chaos itself. If my son's chaos body is a very powerful vacuum that eats the energy in a room, then what is turning over in my chest is a black hole partway through forming. I close my fist around that and feel something in it that can hold a world still. This system is completely without shame. My son is on his feet asking whether I am all right, twice, because I have been standing there like a statue. I breathe out, put every trace of the aura away, and look at his worried face with a mysterious little smile. I tell him not to panic, that his old man is fine, and that I have merely uncovered an extraordinary secret. He asks, what secret? I put my hands behind my back and start lecturing, which is a thing fathers are entitled to do. The strangeness he felt is because he has awakened an extremely rare special physique. It gives him a chi and blood concentration far past what an ordinary person can build, and in a fight, it lets him absorb an enemy's chi and blood and repair himself with it. And that, I tell him, is exactly why Wang Hung went across the room. He stares at me while it lands, and then the joy comes up through him like a flare, a special physique, absorbing other people's power. He asks whether that makes him a 1 in a million peerless genius. I nod with more doting in my eyes than I intend to show, and tell him you could put it that way. As long as he is willing to work, there is no ceiling on where he ends up. He jumps up and punches the air a few times. Then he stops, turns around, and looks at me with the sun coming off him and points at the sky outside the window. Within 5 years, no, 3 years, he is going to become stronger than a martial king, and then it will be his turn to protect me. He will be the one taking me into the starry sky to bring his mother home. I stand there looking at that serious hot-blooded face for a second. Then I put my head down because my shoulders have started shaking. Surpass me. My poor silly son. For every step he takes forward, I take 4 automatically, and I have already had the road ahead of him paved into a highway. In this lifetime, the only way he catches me is to wait until I am too old to get out of a chair. I cough twice, put the smile away, walk over and clap his shoulder, and tell him with great sincerity that he has ambition, and I will be waiting for that day. But before he surpasses me, I add, and I point at the box of junk still sitting unpacked by the wall. First, he can tidy his room. Great Grand Master or Martial King. A man who cannot sweep one room has no business sweeping the world. He snaps me a comical salute, says yes, father, grabs the box, and charges off down the hall with it. I watch him go, and the smile on my face goes soft, and then it goes hard. My son has talent like that, and I cannot leave him standing in the greenhouse they call a school. I need to go find him some real whetstones. Afternoon light comes through the tall windows of Unjong Manor and pools on the floor. I have put down my bowl and chopsticks and settled into the leather sofa to pick my teeth in peace, and my son is clearing the table. Ever since we moved into this place, he is not adapted to being handed things. He goes looking for work the way other people go looking for a chair, as though only having a job in his hands lets him sit still. The doorbell interrupts the quiet, and I raise an eyebrow, because that old fox Ban Hong works faster than I expected. I get up, cross to the carved main door that stands 3 meters tall, and press the release. 2 men in tailored black suits are waiting outside. They are not couriers. They are the city lord's own household guards, and each of them carries the aura of an innate realm martial artist. Anywhere else in this city, these 2 would walk with their chins up, and standing on my step, they are breathing carefully. One of them holds an old red sandalwood box in both hands and calls me Senior Song with a wobble in it. He says the city lord sent this by express order as the first batch of reparations, and that if I am not satisfied, the city lord will go back through the warehouse and find more. I give the box one glance, and the hair goes up on both of them as though something out of the fossil record just looked their way. I tell them to leave it, and to tell Ban Hong the matter is settled. Then I take the box the way a man takes a takeout delivery. They thank me twice each, bow deep, and get off my property at a speed I would call fleeing. My son comes over drying his hands and asks who it was. A delivery man, I tell him. Then I flick a finger and pop the combination lock. When the lid comes up, the smell of medicine fills the whole living room. 3 test tubes the size of a thumb are set into thick gold velvet. The liquid inside them is a forest green that moves like poured jade, and small bubbles keep surfacing as though something in there is alive. Beside them lies a thread-bound old book with 3 bold characters on the cover. Void-breaking blade. I know both items on sight because I last saw their like when I was young. B-grade chi and blood potion, the kind they call Jade Sea Dragon Saliva. Ban Hong did not skimp. Each of these 3 would clear 5 million federal credits on the black market. And even at that price, the market usually has none. I push the box across to my son and tell him it is for him. He waves both hands and says it is too valuable and that I am a martial king now, so surely I should use them myself. That gets a laugh out of me. I hold one up to the light and shake it, and I tell him that at the martial king realm this B-grade stuff is sugar water and would not move my cultivation a hair. For him it is a miracle drug that changes what his body is made of. Then I push the box into his arms and hold his eyes. He is at the early stage of the chi and blood realm with a solid foundation and a very recent breakthrough, and these 3 will stabilize the realm and push him toward the middle stage. As for the book, I point at it and tell him it is 100 times better than the common wild bull fist I taught him. The wild bull fist trains strength, and the void-breaking blade trains killing intent. In a world like this one, a man without a blade in his hand does not get to protect anything. He holds the box and lets the medicinal smell reach him, and his eyes go warm. He is not stupid. He knows what he is holding, and he knows it is not just resources but a road to heaven that his father laid down for him under his feet. He starts to say something, and I wave it off before it can turn sentimental. I tell him I only got him 3 days of leave, and that he is going to spend all 3 in the gravity room digesting every bit of it. He takes a breath, hugs the box, and heads down toward the basement. The next 3 days are hell and paradise in the same room, and the doors stay shut the whole time. On the first day, my son sits cross-legged on the alloy floor and drinks the entire first bottle of Jade Sea Dragon Saliva at once. Even a martial artist at the late stage of the chi and blood realm would cut a dose like that with water and take it in 3 sittings. He remembers what I said about a special physique, hardens his heart, and swallows the lot. The liquid turns to rolling lava in his throat and drives out into his limbs and his bones, and the pain is enormous. Every blood vessel in him feels like it is about to split open. Then, just as he is grinding his teeth on the edge of blacking out, the black hole in his dantian wakes up. That is the chaos body being greedy on instinct. A small cyclone forms around him. The medicinal chi that was rampaging through his body meets its natural predator, goes docile in an instant, and gets swallowed the way a whale swallows water. In half an hour, he digests what would take an ordinary man a week. He sits there feeling his chi and blood come up thick and strong, and asks the empty room whether this is what a special physique is. Then a hard look crosses his face and he reaches for the second bottle. By the second day, he has adapted to the surge. He trains bare-chested with an alloy combat blade under twice normal gravity, swinging until his arms stop belonging to him. The void-breaking blade lives on speed and ruthlessness, a single strike meant to tear the air open and take no answer. His movements are clumsy at the start and he nearly opens his own leg more than once, and he does not care. Once, twice, 1,000 times, with the sweat falling off him like rain and evaporating before it lands, because his body is running that hot. Dusk on the third day, his eyes are bloodshot and the aura on him is condensed down to a point, and all 3 B-grade potions are gone. The chi and blood in him rolls and roars like a river in flood, and the sound leaks out through his skin as a low rumble. He shouts and brings the blade down. No technique, no flourish, only speed and weight. The air tears with a sound like cloth ripping, and a pale white wave runs out along the edge and cuts a mark half an inch deep into the alloy wall. Somewhere inside him, a bottleneck gives way. Upstairs in the living room, I am sitting with my legs crossed, watching the news on the holographic screen with a cup of good green tea in my hand. The system tells me my offspring has cultivated diligently, absorbed 3 B-grade potions, and been promoted to the middle stage of the chi and blood realm. It says the Father's glory judgment applies, and that the host receives amplified feedback. And then it starts synchronizing. The teacup in my hand shakes and does not spill a drop, and the power inside me takes another step up. Martial King Realm, middle stage. Then it tells me the offspring has practiced the void-breaking blade through 1,000 swings, and reached minor achievement. It calls that a critical feedback, evolves my own void-breaking blade straight to perfection, and informs me that I have comprehended the void-breaking saber intent. Something extremely sharp flashes across me and is gone. The leather sofa in the living room, which nothing has touched, quietly develops 100 fine cracks as though invisible saber chi went through it. I close my eyes while a century of insight about blade work pours in. The void-breaking blade was an ordinary secret manual to me an hour ago, and now it feels like I have lived inside it for 100 years. I do not need to hold a blade at all. With a thought, anywhere my gaze lands, the air can become the edge. This feeling is quite good. I put the teacup down and let the ocean roll around inside me, and something smug settles at the corner of my mouth. The son sweats his life out downstairs, while the old man drinks tea and levels up on the second floor. So this is the joy of raising a son. Clearly, I need to start finding Wuya better toys. The basement door bangs open and he comes charging up, stinking of sweat and lit up like a festival. He shouts that he broke through to the middle stage of the chi and blood realm, and that he got the basics of the void-breaking blade on top of it. I put the saber intent away, put the kind old father back on, and turn around smiling to tell him that is not bad at all. The next morning smells faintly of flowers, and I drop it on him over breakfast. I tell him I have already spoken to the school's senior staff, and that from today he only needs to attend the morning theory classes and the basic combat demonstrations. Those routine afternoon training sessions that waste everyone's time are no longer his problem. He stops eating and asks what he is supposed to do instead. I wipe my mouth with a napkin and let a little of the smile show. Come straight home after school, I tell him, or watch for a location for me. His body is a chaos body now, and the school's child-sized sparring drills cannot feed it. From this afternoon on, his old man will be handling his education personally. He looks at that smile of mine and a chill goes down his back, and then he agrees anyway. He knows what a martial king is, and he knows that private instruction from one is an opportunity most people would not dare to want out loud. 6 in the morning, Changnam First High School. The moment my son walks through the gate with his backpack, somebody presses mute on the entire campus. For years he was invisible here, a poor kid under Wang Tae's boot. Good for the occasional sneer from whoever felt like sneering. Today is different. People are saying his name behind their hands and then telling each other to be quiet, because word is that the Wang family got erased for provoking him. Somebody says they never realized he was that kind of scion, and that the city lord himself has to bow when he meets the father. The looks coming at him have envy in them and jealousy in them, and under all of it something closer to fear. The boys who used to swagger on Wang Tae's account keep their necks pulled in and their eyes down, in case this new crown prince decides to go through old accounts. His face stays calm and his stride does not change. After a brush with death and an awakening on top of it, teenagers staring cannot put a ripple in him. An eagle does not lose sleep over what the sparrows are saying. Then somebody behind him calls him a blockhead and asks whether he has finally decided to attend school. Aurora comes running up with a pink bag and her ponytail swinging, and every boy within 30 meters quietly dies inside without moving a muscle. None of them dare come over. To this campus, my son now has a large invisible sign on him that says keep away. She tells him the school has been buzzing for days. Everyone is repeating the story about his father, the reclusive, peerless expert who put one foot through the Wang family bully. They are repeating the part about the city lord coming to apologize, and the whole school has taken to calling him Young Master Song. He shakes his head and tells her not to listen to that nonsense, and that he is still only himself. She leans in and lowers her voice and asks whether the resources his father brought back are really that good. She says his aura feels deeper now than it did that day in the combat room. She is one of the few people in that class who actually pays attention to him. What she is picking up is not raw strength but a change of temperament, a blade that has learned to stay in its sheath. He thinks about the tearing pain of the last few days in the gravity room, and something confident goes across his eyes. There has been some improvement, he tells her. If it were the version of him standing here now, he could finish Wang Hang inside 3 moves. She covers her mouth and accuses him of bragging, because Wang Hang was at the middle stage of the Qi and Blood realm, and then she declares that this young lady believes him anyway. That would mean he can walk into a top institution now, she says. Seoul Martial Arts University, or Pusan Martial Arts University. He looks off down the road and tells her flatly that Seoul is only one of his goals. His goal is to be the national top scholar. She clicks her tongue and says, 3 days off school has done wonders for his ego, and her eyes are laughing while she says it. Then she mentions that first period is combat simulation and the teacher has them doing group sparring. She asks whether he wants to pair up, so she can see how strong the future national top scholar actually is. He says fine, as long as she is not afraid of losing embarrassingly, and the two of them bicker their way to the teaching building. Dozens of kilometers outside Changnam Bay City, there is a stretch of land human civilization has written off. Old-era highways lie across the overgrown wilderness like a broken spine, and the collapsed skyscrapers where giant vines and house would ever wants to nest in them. Above all that, I stand on nothing with my hands behind my back in a set of unremarkable gray clothes, and the astral winds split 3 feet out from me without ever touching the cloth. A martial king can project his mind out to a radius of a kilometer, which is not much, and it is enough to tell me that something here is wrong. The band 30 to 50 kilometers out from a base city is normally the busiest floor in the building for low-level vicious beasts. There should be wolf packs down there, herds of mutant boars, the occasional F-rank or E-rank pair working out a border dispute. Humanity went to the stars without ever exterminating Earth's native ecology, partly to keep the diversity intact, and mostly because these beasts are the whetstone that sharpens every generation of martial arts students. Today the wilderness under me is quiet in a way I do not like. A few iron-skinned boars and gale rabbits are foraging, and that is all. The bloodthirsty demonic wolves that owned the abandoned industrial park are gone. The armored crocodiles that lived along the old riverbed are gone with them. Too quiet, and I come down onto the top of a broken bridge to find out why. There is a faint pressure hanging in the air, and it is not the smell an ordinary beast leaves behind. It is higher up the ladder than that, and it is organized. I crouch and look at a set of claw marks on the bridge deck. They are fresh, cut not long ago, and the strange part is that every set points the same way. All of them are moving in one direction, north, away from Changnam Bay City and deeper into the Forbidden Zone toward the Death Grand Canyon. A mass migration then, or a gathering. Decades of weathering this world plus everything I carried over from the last one, and the back of my neck says conspiracy. Vicious beasts behave like this under 2 conditions. Either something enormous is coming, an earthquake or a tsunami, or a beast king has been born somewhere and is calling in its people. If it is the second one, Changnam City has a problem in its future. I stand and brush the dust off my hands. Fear is not really available to me at this realm. And anyway, I did not come out here for the news. I came out shopping for sparring partners for my son. Since the merchandise has left the shelf, I will go further in. I look north at the deep mountains and the old forest under their black mist, and I do not believe I cannot catch a few decent ones. Then I am gone, and all that is left where I was standing is a trail of clouds shredded by the sonic boom. A second later, I am 10 miles away. The plan is simple enough. Take a few peak E-rank beasts, or an early D-rank if one presents itself. Dump them on the back hill at Unjong Manor so my son can learn what wilderness survival tastes like at close range. As for the beast tide, when the sky falls, the tall ones hold it up. If it ever gets as far as threatening my son's life, that is early enough for me to get involved. The midday sun is cooking the city, and inside Unjong Manor the climate control keeps everything at a civilized 22 degrees Celsius. My son comes home half an hour early, and before he has even changed his shoes, a dull roar comes through the villa walls and reaches him faintly. There is tyranny in that sound, and bloodlust, and under it the flat clatter of heavy chains dragging on stone. He works it out fast enough. This must be the special training. He simply did not expect the noise level, or that somebody had installed a zoo in the house. He wanders into the kitchen, where I am wearing an apron and taking a knife through ingredients at speed, and asks what is making that racket on the back hill. I do not look up. Wash your hands and eat first, I tell him, because you will only have the strength to take a beating on a full stomach. Then I correct myself to say practice, which does not help. He sits down at a table loaded with food that looks and smells excellent and eats about a third of his attention. Those faint roars keep scratching at him. Everything he knows about vicious beasts he learned from holographic textbooks and training videos, and he has never once stood in front of one. I shake my head and tell him to stop counting rice grains. If he is in that much of a hurry, we can skip the meal and start early. Then I untie the apron, do not bother wiping my hands, and head for the backyard. His chopsticks hit the table and he is behind me before I reach the door. Through the garden and out the heavy iron gate to the back hill, and the sight of it stops him cold with his pupils blown wide. The pleasant landscaped hill behind the manor has been cleared down to bare yellow earth about the size of a football field. A dozen thick alloy pillars stand out on that ground, and chained to every one of them with shackles as thick as a wrist is a different vicious beast, each with its own remarkable smell. On the left is an armored porcupine covered in black iron spikes, throwing its body against the ground hard enough to shake the dirt with every impact. In the middle is a giant rock bear standing 3 meters tall, its stony hide still scarred from being taken, watching my son with blood-red eyes while thick saliva runs off its jaw. On the right are several windswift wolves, all narrow bodies and bad intentions, still holding an ambush posture even in chains, with low sounds vibrating in their throats. It is a small private arena, and my son's throat has gone dry looking at it. These are E-rank beasts, the tier that corresponds to the Chi and Blood realm. The evil Chi coming off them and the killing intent they are not bothering to hide have nothing to do with padded classmates in a training hall. I lean against a snapped tree with my arms crossed, about as tense as a man looking at somebody's pet dogs, and tell him that from today these are his sparring partners. His mouth twitches. Any one of these animals loose in Sector F would empty 3 blocks, and his old man just called them sparring partners. He points at the porcupine, the loudest of them, and asks whether he is supposed to practice with them right now. Otherwise what? I ask him. Are we keeping them for the new year? Then I flicker across the ground and am standing at the porcupine's post. I explain the pairing as I go. This is an early stage E-rank armored porcupine which lines up with the early stage of the human Chi and Blood realm. Since he is at the middle stage, he should logically be able to take it apart. Then I tell him to show me what he has, and a cold light goes through my hand and cuts the chains. The porcupine roars its freedom into the sky and locks its crimson eyes on the boy standing in the middle of the field. Its hooves tear at the dirt, and then the whole mass of it comes at him like a runaway truck throwing up dust. He is genuinely shocked at the speed, because the books said porcupines were slow, and the books were lying. I toss him an unsharpened alloy training longsword and tell him to catch. He gets a hand on it just as the tusks come inside 3 meters, and he lunges left on instinct with terrible footwork. The spiked flank goes past close enough to brush his clothes, and the wind of it stings his cheek. Before he can set his feet, the porcupine shows a flexibility that has no business belonging to that body. Its front hooves break hard, it pivots on its hind legs, and the thick tail comes around like a steel whip with a whistle in it. He gets the long sword up. The impact rings, travels down the hilt, splits the webbing of his thumb open, and throws him back 7 or 8 steps on raw force alone before he can stop himself. Both his arms have gone numb. So this is actual combat. His Chi and Blood value is measurably higher than the beast's. His strength should be greater, and in that one exchange he was completely dominated. The porcupine does not let him breathe. It comes again with its tusks lowered and every intention of putting a hole through him, and he keeps dodging on reflex alone. His void-breaking blade falls apart into disconnected pieces with no shape to it. What little he lands hits the black iron spikes, throws sparks, and does not get through. Too stiff, I tell him from across the field. My voice is not loud, and it arrives in his ear perfectly clear. Everything he learned at school is a dead routine. Does he think a vicious beast will hold still while he sets his stance? Is that middle stage Chi and Blood realm of his purely decorative? Then I sharpen up and shout the part that matters. He should not forget his physique. The Chaos body is not a meat shield. He is supposed to eat its Chi and blood at the instant of contact. The word eat goes into him like a nail, and the porcupine is already charging again. And this time he does not retreat. He is at the top of his fear and he forces himself flat calm anyway. And down in his dantian that hazy chaos vortex begins to turn. Something that can only be called hunger comes out of every pore he has. He watches it come and slide sideways at the last instant like a ghost. It is not a panicked evasion this time. It is an entry he chose. He puts his left hand against the spiked flank lightly the way you would test a wall. Before today, pressing on that would have left his palm ringing. The Chi and blood in his hand turns into a small vortex of negative pressure, and the armored porcupine screams. It has never felt anything like this. The power inside it goes out through that point of contact like a dam giving way, and the momentum of a charge that had nowhere to go stalls dead. My son feels warm, violent chi and blood essence come up his left arm and into him, and everything the fight has cost him so far is repaid at once with interest. On top, one side wanes and the other waxes. That is the chaos body, and that is why it terrifies people. The panic goes out of his face, and what replaces it is the look of a hunter who has finally seen prey. The long sword stops shaking in his grip. He pours the plundered chi and blood into the blade along with his own. Void-breaking blade, first form, flow sever. He shouts, and the long sword becomes a bar of white light that whistles as it goes, and it lands on the joint of the porcupine's neck where the armor is thinnest. There are no sparks this time and no countershock. It goes through like a hot knife going through butter, and hard iron plate parts like wet paper while the blade sinks in and takes the spine and the artery together. The porcupine wails once. Its own momentum carries it a few meters further, plowing a trench in the dirt, and then it comes down and twitches and stops. Blood spreads across the ground and reaches my son's shoes. He holds his follow-through and breathes hard. His body is finished and his spirit has never been more awake. He looks at the animal at his feet, then at his own left hand, and the pleasure of that theft is still sitting in him like liquor. He asks nobody in particular whether that was true combat. From panicked running to a clean kill, and the only thing that changed in between was that he learned how to use what he is. I applaud from behind him, walk over, and look the corpse up and down. Not bad, I tell him. His comprehension is decent, and that last strike turned the enemy's own force against him, which is starting to resemble something. He turns around with his eyes shining and tells me the chaos body is broken. It was not charging at him, he says. It was delivering supplies, and the harder it pushed, the stronger he got. Naturally, I say. Then I hand him a towel and tell him not to celebrate yet, because that was a stupid E-rank pig at the bottom of the tier. If he ever meets a speed type or something that fights at range, he will never get close enough to absorb anything at all. My eyes go to the wind-swift wolves straining at their posts. I tell him to rest 10 minutes and smooth out his chi and blood, and then I let him see the smile. Next round, 2 wind-swift wolves, together. His heart, which had just come back down, goes straight up into his throat, and he wails that this is too fast, and asks whether I mean 2 of them. Stop your nonsense, I tell him. If he wants to survive in a world that eats people, and if he wants to protect anybody at all, then I point at myself, and then at the sky beyond the roofline, and I finish the sentence. He has to keep getting stronger. He goes still for a second. Then he sees my face, grips the longsword, and his exhaustion evaporates. Bring them on, he says. It is only 2 wolves, and he was warming up anyway. He wipes the blood off his cheek, and his eyes go as sharp as the edge in his hand. The week that follows is hell, and it is also the furnace that reforges him. The back hill of Unjong Manor used to be a landscaped garden, and now it stinks of blood from dawn to dusk with the roaring and the metal never quite stopping. His rate of improvement is not normal. He starts the week barely surviving an early-stage E-rank armored boar. Midweek, he takes a middle-stage E-rank Gale Wolf apart with 1 blade. By the end of it, the setting sun is the color of blood, and the clearing is red with it. He stands shirtless with his chest heaving. The fair skin has gone a healthy bronze, and while his muscle is nothing a fitness coach would put on a poster, every fiber of it is loaded. Scars of every size cover him, and every one of them is a medal. Across from him, a beast with burning crimson fur crouches low with a threat rolling in its throat. A blazing demon fox, and this one is close enough to D-rank to make the distinction academic. It is fast beyond reason, and there is something in those cunning vertical pupils that looks uncomfortably like thought. He holds an alloy battle blade that is more notch than edge now, and his eyes are cold. A week in that clearing has scrubbed the last of the schoolboy off him and left something with an edge to it. The fox moves. It does not run at him. Its hind legs fire and it becomes a streak of red lightning that leaves after images, using tree trunks and rocks to change direction. It comes in so erratically that it might as well be 3 foxes attacking from 3 angles. His pupils tighten. This thing is twice as fast as the Gale Wolf was. The wind hits his face and a claw like a dagger arrives silently at the left side of his throat. A week ago, he would already be bleeding out on the ground. Instead, he does not even turn his head. The chaos vortex in his dantian spins hard, and the airflow, the change in temperature, and the flicker of killing intent all resolve into a clear picture behind his eyes. He bends his upper body back at an angle nobody should be able to hold, and the claw grazes the tip of his nose and takes a few strands of hair with it. He does not retreat. He waits for the exact seam where the fox's old momentum has ended, and its new strength has not arrived. Got you, he says. His body snaps upright like a released spring. His left hand becomes a claw, and instead of striking, he makes a grasping motion at the fox's belly through empty air. An invisible black hole opens between them. The fox is halfway into changing direction when its chi and blood stalls in its body and it loses half a beat it cannot afford and shrieks in real terror. Too late, he says, and the long blade is already up. The sea inside him pours into the edge and a faint gold shimmer runs along it. Void-breaking blade, second form, army breaker. This one is not built for speed, it is built for momentum, for the notion that 10,000 soldiers in the way are simply 10,000 soldiers to go through. The blade light comes down like a falling meteor with a sonic boom behind it. The fox throws its claws up to parry, and against chaos body strength that resistance is an insect trying to stop a wagon. Its claws come off. The blade keeps going, opens it diagonally from the shoulder and pins it to the ground. Blood dyes half of my son red, and the fox twitches twice while the light goes out of its eyes. He straightens up slowly and pulls the blade free, and looking down at that corpse he wants to put his head back and howl. A near D-rank vicious beast, and he can kill it. I set my teacup down on the lounge chair and clap a few times. Not bad, I tell him. He knows how to use the chaos body, and the momentum on that last army breaker got to about 70%, which means the week was not wasted. My voice stays lazy and I do not manage to keep the pride out of it. In 7 days, he went from a boy who only knew how to study to something that kills cunning beasts above its own tier. That is the talent he got from his mother, and it is frightening to watch up close. I am halfway out of the chair with a towel when the system starts singing in the back of my head. It tells me my offspring has been through dozens of life and death battles inside a week, that his combat skill has improved significantly, and that he has reached the proficient level. Then it applies the judgment, calls it a critical feedback, and congratulates me on a combat skill realm breakthrough to the microcontrol level. Lightning goes through the chaos in my head. A warm current comes up out of my dantian and runs through my limbs and my bones, and it does not make my body stronger, it makes my perception and my control stronger, which is a much larger gift. The world reorganizes in front of me. What used to be air is now 1,000 distinct currents moving at their own speeds. A leaf falling out of a tree 100 meters off travels like a slideshow, and I can name the exact spot on the ground it is going to touch in 6 seconds. Every inch of muscle, every tendon, and the energy moving through every individual cell are all under my hand. Microcontrol. Martial artists spend entire lives reaching for the edge of this and never touch it. It means mastery of force at its absolute ceiling, where 1 point of strength does the work of 10. I know a man's move before he makes it, and I can walk through 1,000 blossoms without one petal landing on me. I reach out without thinking and pinch a single speck of dust out of the air between 2 fingers. Up until an hour ago, I had the power of a martial king and the finesse of a child holding a sledgehammer, good for breaking whatever I could reach. Now I am a surgeon with a scalpel, and I can take an opponent apart along the lines he was assembled on. My son wipes the blood off his face, notices his father standing motionless with 2 fingers held in a strange position, and asks what is wrong. I flit the dust away and tell him it is nothing. Then I put my hands behind my back, look at this boy standing there wrapped in slaughter, and tell him I am simply gratified by how fast he is coming along. Clearly I will have to work harder myself, or I will not be able to keep this little monster in line much longer. He scratches his head and tells me not to be modest, because the stronger he gets, the better he understands the size of the gap. He can kill a demon fox now, and standing in front of me, he still feels like he is looking up a mountain with no visible top. Stop sucking up, I tell him, and toss him a bottle of restoration fluid. In the center of Cheonnam Bay City, the city lord's office has an atmosphere in it you could suffocate on. Ban Hong, supreme ruler of this city and a great grand master, is standing beside his own desk like a schoolboy who broke something, trembling with sweat across his forehead. The leather chair that represents his authority is occupied by a middle-aged man in a white vintage robe. He has a soft face and very long fingers, and he is slowly turning Ban Hong's favorite jade paperweight over in his hands. The Special Commissioner of Hanam Great Base, Yu Un. Martial King Realm, Peak. Ban Hong swallows and gives the accountant a dry voice. Everything that happened at the high school that day. How Song Mu arrived through the air, how he put a foot through Wang Hung, and how he squeezed Deputy Commander Vamos to death. How his face changed inside a minute and finished Wang Tae and his mother after an agreement had been struck. How the city lord himself swallowed his pride and delivered the compensation. He does not leave anything out, and he does not embellish anything either, because he knows that killing him would be an even smaller errand for this man than it was for Song Mu. When the report ends, Yuan's hands stop moving. The priceless jade paperweight becomes powder and runs out between his fingers, and Ban Hong's heart skips. Yuan repeats the words Martial King, with interest in those narrow eyes and a playful curve at his mouth. He did not expect a godforsaken little place like Cheonnam Base to be hiding a dragon. He says my name and calls me the genius Grand Master they crippled more than 10 years ago. Apparently the man found some extraordinary opportunity, healed the injury, turned the disaster into profit, and came out the other side in the King realm. He says it softly, and there is enough killing intent under it to frost a window. Ban Hong tests the water carefully. That Song Mu is strange, he says, and extremely protective of his own. And the Wang branch really did kick a steel plate this time. He asks whether perhaps this matter should be dropped. Yuan finishes and glances sideways at him in a way that drops him into an ice cellar. He asks whether City Lord Ban has stayed in this small town so long that his brain has rusted through. Then he stands, walks to the window, and looks down at the steel city with a voice as flat as water. Wang Hun and Vamos were garbage, he says, and the Wang main branch has so much collateral branch garbage that it would not notice 10,000 of them dying. However, the pressure fills the room all at once, and Ban Hong's knees nearly put him on the floor. When you beat a dog, Yuan says, you look at who owns it. It would have been survivable if Song Mu had simply killed them. What he should not have done is humiliate the Wang family in public and treat their standing as though it did not exist. If the reputation of the Wang family of Hanam can be walked on by some rural martial king with no answer given, then they have no business leading Hanam at all. He turns around, and there is something cruel in his eyes. The Wang family old ancestors in secluded cultivation, he says, and word has come down anyway. Changnam base does not need a martial king. It particularly does not need a disobedient one. Ban Hong understands what he is hearing. This is going to be a fight to the death, and he asks, with a shake in it, when the commissioner intends to move. No rush, Yuan says. The night is black and the stars have gone somewhere else. Down on the training ground behind Unjong Manor, my son is bare-chested, with the sweat running along muscle that has started to look carved. A faint, hazy gray current turns around him, which is what chi and blood look like when they are pushed to the absolute wall. Every breath he takes pulls the free spiritual chi out of the air around him, like moths into a lamp, and it goes straight into his meridians. A full day of hard training has left him bruised everywhere and standing on the threshold of the late stage. I am up on the second floor terrace with my hands behind my back, watching him through the glass while the night wind moves my training robes around. This kid is more driven than I ever was. The pale blue system panel ripples up in front of me like water. It has my son down at the late stage of the Chi and Blood realm, which puts me at the late stage of the Martial King realm. My Primal Chaos 1 Chi technique is listed as sitting at perfection. Under martial skills, it gives me the Wild Bull Fist at perfection, with the Fist Intent Born, the Void Breaking Blade at perfection with the Saber Intent Born, and Leaf Treading Footwork at major achievement. At the bottom, it notes my combat technique at the microcontrol level, as though that were an ordinary line item. Martial King, late stage. I close my fist and feel an ocean turn over. In 1 week, while my son tore forward, I went from freshly minted Martial King all the way to the top of the realm. In a small base city like Changnam, that makes me a god with no competition for the title. It is still not enough. I look north, at the wider starry sky, at where the people who took my wife are living their lives. There are less than 3 months to the Martial Arts College entrance examination. By the way past years have gone, that exam draws geniuses out of every base city, and there may well be seeded candidates parachuted in from above. Grandmaster Realm prodigies sitting the same paper as my son is not an impossible thing. Wuya has the chaos body and he started late. To sweep the country and take the top spot 3 months from now, sweat alone will not close that distance. Study is a poor man's road and martial arts is a rich man's road. The chaos body is a gold-swallowing beast, and it has to be buried in resources to grow. The B-grade potions are already gone, so the fuel needs replacing. Tomorrow I go to Sector B. In the morning, my son puts away 3 large bowls of mutated beast meat porridge and leaves for school with a spring in him. I watch him go, then change into a plain gray outfit and head out myself. If Sector F is the slums and Sector A is where the powerful keep their houses, Sector B is where the money lives. The land there is worth its weight in metal and the towers go up out of sight. Giant holographic advertisements cross overhead selling new model alloy combat blades, genetic potions, and protective suits. Luxury cars move through the streets, the pedestrians are well dressed, and even the patrol officers on the corners carry gear a full grade above anything in Sector F. I walk through all of it with my hands in my pockets. My plain gray suit does not belong among these people and I have no opinion about that. At my realm, this sort of thing is weather. I could be wearing a sack and I would still be a martial king. Then I stop and look up at the building I came for. Treasure Pavilion. 4 stories of ancient-style architecture in vermilion, with upturned eaves and painted rafters, and 2 stone lions cut from black gold rock crouching at the entrance. The gilded characters on the plaque are written with a flourish that tells you how much money is behind them. Treasure Pavilion is one of the largest chain trading houses in the Federation. The power behind it reaches across the whole human Federation and keeps branches out in the starry sky. People like to say that with enough money you can buy the egg of a starry sky behemoth over their counter. I am here to stock up, and only a house this size can keep a chaos body fed. Over the high threshold and a faint sandalwood smell closes the street off behind me. The ground floor hall is wide and bright, with hundreds of crystal counters full of basic medicinal pills and common tier weapons, and it is packed with low-level martial artists haggling. I sweep it once and shake my head. This is treasure to ordinary people, and it is too impure and too weak for my son. The second floor is quieter, selling ranked weapons and C-grade potions. A few assistants in cyan robes are talking behind the counters, and they give me one glance, register the clothes, and go back to their conversation. That suits me. I head for the stairs to the third floor. My foot is on the first step when a sharp voice tells me to stop right there. A female clerk comes over fast, made up carefully and poured into a tight uniform. She looks me up and down and lets her eyes rest 2 full seconds on my worn sneakers, and she does not bother hiding what she thinks. Then she crosses her arms, plants herself across the stairs, lifts her chin, calls me uncle, and suggests I'm in the wrong place, because that is the third floor up there. I know it is the third floor, I tell her. I am going up to buy some things. She sneers as though I have told a joke. Does he know what they sell on the third floor? She asks the room. Those are resources laid in for noble martial artist lords, and a single medicinal pill up there runs to tens of thousands of federal credits. Then she puts a finger up near my nose and asks whether I saw the sign, because the third floor is a members-only area, and whether I happen to have a membership card. That makes me frown. I came to Treasure Pavilion many times when I was young, and that was 20 years ago, and there was never any such rule. I ask her, mildly, since when Treasure Pavilion has had a rule like that, and point out that Federation law says a trading house that opens its doors may not put up barriers without cause. She rolls her eyes and her voice gets meaner. What year is that old news from? She asks. The Changnam branch brought the rule in 6 months ago when the new manager took over, and if I want the third floor I can deposit 500,000 for a membership first. Looking at the state of me, she adds, I could be sold whole and not clear 500,000. Then she tells me to get out and stop blocking the way for distinguished guests. She asks whether I could pay for the carpet if I dirtied it, and waves her hand like she is shooing an insect. The commotion has pulled a few customers over to watch with the faces people wear at a dogfight. Somebody wonders aloud who this is, dressed like that and trying the third floor. Somebody else decides I am a poor ghost who wants a look at how the other half lives. A third one mentions that the new manager of Treasure Pavilion is famous for caring about money and nothing else, and that this uncle has picked a bad day. My gaze cools while I listen to it. I did not come here for trouble. I also have very little patience left for being bitten by dogs. So a rule the new manager made, I say. What a magnificent display of authority. She flies into a rage and tells me to shut my mouth and asks whether an old thing like me dares to criticize her manager. She has spent long enough leaning on Treasure Pavilion's name that she does not bother respecting squad leaders, and a poor man talking back is more than she can process. She screams for security to come throw the troublemaker out, and reaches out to shove me. Her hand is about to touch my sleeve when I slap her. The sound of it drops the entire second floor into silence. She goes off her feet as though a truck took her, turns 3 times in the air, and lands in a display cabinet 5 meters away in an avalanche of broken glass. Half her face swells up while she is still lying there, and she spits 2 teeth and a mouthful of blood onto the floor with no idea what has happened to her. Then she gets her voice back, clutches her cheek, and starts screaming about murder and about troublemakers in Treasure Pavilion. I take my hand back slowly, get a handkerchief out of my pocket, and wipe my palm with roughly the interest of a man who has swatted a mosquito. Noisy, I tell her. Then I tell her to go get her manager because I would like to ask who gave him the courage to invent rules like that. It does not take 30 seconds. Angry shouting comes down from upstairs asking who dares behave so atrociously in his Treasure Pavilion, and then a run of heavy footsteps arrives with it. 7 or 8 thick men in black come down the stairs behind a middle-aged man in a brocade robe, with a mustache. This is Joe Dokshe, manager of the Treasure Pavilion branch in Changnam Base, and his face is dark and his eyes look ready to spray fire. He has run this operation for half a year with friends on both sides of the law, and nobody has ever hit one of his people on his floor. The clerk sees her backer and starts sobbing on cue. She points at me and shrieks that this pauper tried to force his way to the third floor without a membership. When she stopped him, she says, he called Treasure Pavilion a swindler's shop and then struck her. She begs the manager to get her justice. Joe Dokshe follows the finger and finds an ordinary-looking middle-aged man in gray casual clothes standing with his hands behind his back, not appearing especially concerned. Good, he says. Very good. He laughs the way men laugh when the anger has gone past speech and something vicious comes into his eyes. In Changnam Base, he tells me, nobody has ever touched Joe Dokshe's people. He does not care who I am. If I do not leave a hand behind today, I should stop thinking about the door. Then he waves grandly and tells them to get me and cripple me. The guards come in with unpleasant smiles. Every one of them is at Chi and Blood Realm great perfection, and the man in front is a retired mercenary who recently broke into the innate realm. He raises an iron rod and brings it down at my head, and advises me to keep my eyes open in my next life. I do not lift an eyelid. A field of pressure erupts with me at the center of it, invisible and absolute. There is no motion in it and no technique in it. It is nothing but my aura going outward. All 7 or 8 of them leave the ground faster than they arrived, as though an enormous invisible hand swatted a table clear. They hit walls and pillars, cough blood and fold up on the floor without managing to scream, and none of them are conscious by the time they land. Joe Deokje had settled in to enjoy the show, and the vicious smile freezes on his face. His legs start going. 7 or 8 experts knocked flat in an instant, without so much as a ripple of chi and blood. That is not a great grandmaster. City Lord Ban Hong is a great grandmaster and could not do that this cleanly. He asks how this is possible with a shake in his voice. I raise my head, and my purple gold eyes settle on him. Then I am not where I was. When I reappear, I am directly in front of him, nose to nose, with less than 3 inches between us, and his pupils go to needle points because he never saw me move. You said something about crippling one of my hands, I tell him. I keep it light, and it comes out like a whisper from something that lives under a floor. Then, while the room watches, my feet leave the floor. I rise a foot and hang there. Gravity has quietly declined to participate, and the pressure of a higher order of life comes down on Joe Deokje like a roof. He gets the words walking on air out, and then his soul tries to leave. He is only a merchant, and he has traveled and he is not ignorant, and he knows exactly what he is looking at. A man who can shrug off gravity and stand in empty air with his physical body is a martial king. His knees hit the floor hard enough to crack a kneecap, and he does not feel it. He is too busy understanding that 90 seconds ago he promised to cripple the hand of a martial king, and wondering how that is different from suicide. He starts kowtowing hard enough to leave blood on the marble, calling me my lord and begging for mercy. He failed to recognize Mount Baekdu, he says, and he deserves to die, and greed blinded him. The clerk who was so magnificent 5 minutes ago has already fainted with her eyes rolled back. I look down at him from the air and ask whether this membership system was his. He is too frightened to lie coherently. It was, he admits. He set it up privately because Changnam Base is remote and a long way from central authority, and he thought he could skim a little. He was wrong, he says, truly wrong, and he will abolish it right now, immediately. I put out a hand and take his throat from where I am, the way you would pick up a chick, and lift him. His feet kick at nothing and his face goes the color of pig liver, while the suffocation introduces him to the Reaper. Skimming a fortune and then coming after me over it, I tell him, if this were my temper from 20 years ago, you would already be a corpse, but I came out today to buy things for my son, and I would rather not see blood. It is bad luck. I drop him into a corner like a bag of rubbish. The death penalty is waived, I tell him. The punishment is not. Then I sit down, dust my hands, and inform him that I intend to do some shopping at Treasure Pavilion today, and that how that goes is his decision. Joe Deokje has just discovered he is going to live, and he does not hesitate for even 1 second. He crawls to my feet and fawns like a lapdog. My presence in his small shop is a blessing from his ancestors, he says. I should not think about payment. Whatever I like, I should simply take, and all of it is free. Free, I say, and raise an eyebrow. Those are his words, and I did not force him. No forcing, he says, absolutely no forcing. And this is his humble tribute. His head goes back and forth like a hand drum, because he is afraid an unhappy martial king will turn him into paste. Fine then, I tell him, since he is so sincere. Lead the way to the 3rd floor. Bring out the best chi and blood potions, the body tempering pills, and whatever heaven and earth treasures the building is holding. 10 minutes later, the 3rd floor shelves are barer than a licked plate. Joe Deokje looks at his empty stockroom with his heart quietly bleeding and keeps a smile welded to his face. That is the whole of the shop's inventory, he tells me. 3 vials of B-grade dragon blood grass extract and 10 bottles of purple gold body tempering pills. Together they are worth more than 200 million federal credits, which is 3 years of profit for this branch. Set against staying alive, it is not really a sum. I look at the small mountain of resources and nod, satisfied. This will keep that boy's chaos body fed for a while. I am looking around for something to carry it in when my eye lands on an old silver ring on Joe Deokje's left index finger, and I stop. A space ring. Storage equipment exists in this world, and space crystals are so rare that the price is theoretical, because there is usually nothing to buy at any number. A ring holding a single cubic meter trades for a villa in Sector A. I would not have guessed a branch manager was sitting on one. He feels the way I am looking at it, and stiffens, and his hand goes back a few inches on its own. That ring of yours is quite unique, I say pleasantly. He is almost crying. That ring is his emergency exit, bought off the black market with half a lifetime of savings and every favor he had. He also does not dare say no. He looks at my half-smile, swallows the tears, works it off his finger, and offers it up with both hands as tribute. I take it without ceremony and sweep my divine thought through. The space inside is not large, about a cubic meter, and it is more than enough for the potions and the pills. At least you are sensible, I tell him. Then I sweep everything off the floor into the ring in one pass, put it on my finger, and feel considerably better about my afternoon. One more thing, I say, patting his greasy face. I do not want a third person learning who I am today. He understands, he says. I am simply an ordinary customer passing through. I walk out of Treasure Pavilion into the sunlight with the ring on my hand, thinking about the gold-swallowing beast at home waiting to be fed, and feeling like an extremely competent father. Behind me, the place is wrecked. Joe Deokje sits on the floor looking at his stripped shop, unable to even work up a cry. He settles for kicking the unconscious clerk in the ribs and calling her the spendthrift who nearly got him killed. At midday, my son pushes open the front door and stops dead. The table is buried under gift boxes in golden silk phoebe wood and jade and low-temperature alloy, stacked into a small mountain. Behind the mountain, I am sitting cross-legged in the leather sofa, turning the silver storage ring I liberated from the Treasure Pavilion manager, wearing the exact expression of a man who came into money recently. I wave, and a red sandalwood box with a top-grade seal on it sails across the room in a lazy arc and lands at his feet. He scrambles to catch it and asks what this is. Open it, I tell him. He complained about his chi and blood recovering slowly during training in the back mountain a few days ago, so I went out for a walk and picked up some supplies. It should last him a while. He swallows and gets the lid up with unsteady fingers, and the medicinal smell that comes out of it is thick enough to lean on. One breath and his exhausted chi and blood come back up on their own. Inside are 3 test tubes with a blood gold shine to them, stamped with the Treasure Pavilion anti-counterfeit mark. Grade B dragon blood grass extract. He sucks in a breath and nearly drops the box. One grade B potion like that costs 10 million federal credits, and there are 3 of them sitting in his hands, which is not what most people mean by some supplies. He asks me how much this cost, and his voice shakes a little. He says we have money now, and that is not a reason to burn it like this. Money, I say, and let the smile out. Talking about money hurts our feelings, and anyway, I did not spend a single credit today. His eyes go round and his whole face asks whether I take him for a fool. Who, he wants to know, is generous enough to hand over hundreds of millions of credits worth of goods. I ran into an enthusiastic Treasure Pavilion manager. I tell him with a perfectly straight face. The man said he could see I had an extraordinary constitution and insisted on giving me these to start a friendship, and refusing would have been rude, so I reluctantly accepted. My son does not have a response to that. He knows exactly how much of it is nonsense, and he looks at the resources anyway and cannot speak, because he understands what his father is doing, and why. Stop daydreaming, I tell him, and stand up and let my face go serious. There are less than 3 months to the martial arts college entrance exam. There are plenty of resources now, so he does not need to hold anything back on my account. He hugs the box and tells me he will get it done, and there is a fire behind his eyes when he says it. The underground training room becomes his hermitage for the days that follow. With a chaos body, he does not have to worry the way ordinary martial artists do about whether his body can take what he pours into it. Grade B dragon blood grass goes down, then the purple gold body tempering pills, then kilos of high-energy compressed beast meat. On top of the resources, he gets his father's personal instruction on the marrow of the void-breaking blade and the finishing power of the wild bull fist, and his cultivation leaves the ground. Day 5 puts him at the peak of the late stage of the chi and blood realm. Day 7 brings a dull explosion up out of the basement. His chi and blood surge like something with scales and form a visible layer of red armor around his body. Chi and blood realm great perfection, which is not a step up in realm so much as a change of kind. On raw chi and blood volume alone, my son now exceeds ordinary martial artists who have already crossed into the innate realm. Another new morning, and he goes off to school in good spirits while I sit on the second floor balcony with my tea the way I usually do. Today the cup never quite gets to my mouth. Something is wrong. At the Martial King realm, the sense for danger is very sharp, and since sunrise my eyelid has been jumping and there has been a weight sitting on me that will not move. Then a figure comes stumbling out of the sky into the manor grounds, and I am in front of him before his feet touch anything. It is Ban Hong, and there is not a shred of the city lord left in him. His hair is wild, his face is bloodless, and his high-collared jacket is soaked through with cold sweat. He grabs my arm and gets it out hoarsely without waiting to breathe. Go say to your son, that special commissioner from Hanam, Yu Un, the madman, has gone to intercept and kill Song Wu. The last 4 words turn everything in my eyes red, and the killing intent that comes off me is enough to change the weather. I say the name Yu Un through my teeth, and then I am a streak of purple gold light going over the horizon, and the sonic boom takes out every window in the manor behind me. Ban Hong sits down where he stands and pants at the sky, full of fear and a struggle that arrived far too late. It is over, he tells himself. As city lord, he was supposed to cooperate with the special commissioner's operation. He also has principles somewhere under all that caution, and more to the point, he knows exactly what Songmu is. That fool Yu Un, for a personal grudge more than a decade old, decided to go after a child. On the shaded path that is the only route to Changnam First High School, My son stops walking. The road is normally busy, and this morning it is silent enough that even the insects have quit. He takes a breath, reaches slowly for the alloy combat blade across his back, and tells whoever is out there to come out since they are already here. A cold voice compliments his perception and says it is only to be expected from that man's son. Then a soft-faced middle-aged man in a white vintage robe walks out of the tree shade, Yu-un. He looks at my son the way a butcher looks at livestock, with cruelty in it and something worse that is enjoying itself. My son's muscles lock and his sixth sense starts screaming, and he asks who this is. Who he is does not matter, Yu-un says, flicking his fingernails. What matters is that the boy's father is Song-mu, and that there is no surname he hates more. 20 years ago at the Hanam Main City Genius Battle, he says, Song-mu was exactly this age, and exactly this full of himself. A sinister nostalgia comes over his face while he says it. So this is one of his father's old enemies. The son pays the father's debt, Yu-un says, walking closer while the leaves around him wither and drop. Today he will destroy the man's hope first, and let him taste losing his own blood. He raises a hand and the pressure of a peak martial king begins to gather. And then he stops. He is looking at my son's face, which is a young Song-mu's face, and whatever lives in his head changes its mind. Killing the boy instantly would be too kind. He wants proof. He wants to be able to say he is stronger than Song-mu, and if the only song available is the son will do. To kill you, he says, I would not lower myself to use martial king strength. His aura begins dropping through Grandmaster, then in it, then chi and blood. It settles at chi and blood realm great perfection and stops there. Song-mu beat him at chi and blood realm great perfection once, he explains. Today he will use that same realm to torture the boy to death and prove that Yu-un is invincible among his equals. He draws a flexible sword from his waist, and the blade wavers in the light, like a snake's tongue. Draw your blade, boy, he says. I will let you die with your eyes open. Feeling the aura come down, my son's nerves actually loosen, and then a battle intent he has never had before goes up behind his eyes. A fight at the same rank then. He grips the combat blade, and the chaos vortex inside him begins to turn hard and lets out a roar that nobody can hear. If this man were fighting as a martial king, he would be dead in a second. At the same rank, he still has a chance. The tree-lined path outside the school turns into a killing ground. The air stiffens and even the wind quits under that much intent. Yu-un moves. Suppressed realm or not, this is a peak martial king who has lived inside the martial Dao for decades, and every movement he makes is economical to the point of being beautiful. The flexible sword goes out like a snake picking its meal, drawing an ugly clever arc through the air straight at my son's throat. Fast, accurate, and without an ounce of mercy in it. That is what the combat awareness of a martial king looks like. My son's eyes narrow and every hair on him stands up. He opens his perception all the way, and the world slows down. And even slowed down, that sword is fast enough to make his heart stumble. He shifts his feet and slides his body aside like a phantom, close enough to feel the cold coming off the blade. The sword chi opens his collar and leaves a shallow red line on his neck. He does not retreat while he dodges. The alloy battle saber sweeps around with the full weight of chi and blood realm great perfection behind it, aimed at Yu-un's waist. Yu-un sneers. His body twists at an angle that argues with anatomy, and the heavy stroke goes past him without ever getting close. Then he flicks his wrists and the flexible sword turns into a downpour, every drop of it aimed at something vital. The clashing runs through the trees in a continuous line and sparks come off the steel in showers. My son's face is as great as it gets, and all he can do is defend. His saber is powerful, and against swordwork that moves like spilled mercury, it might as well be a fence post. His arm goes numb from the impacts. The webbing of his hand splits wide, and blood runs down the hilt. So this is what a martial king's foundation looks like from the wrong side of it. Their raw strength is comparable, and thanks to the chaos body, his chi and blood outlast the older man's easily. In technique, he is being taken apart. Yu-un plays it like a cat with a mouse, and not one of those strokes is meant to finish him, and every one of them opens him to the bone. Inside 10 exchanges, my son is wearing more blood than uniform. Already at your limit, Yu-un asks while he works. It seems the boy is not as strong as advertised. You are celebrating early, old man, my son tells him. Then he stops purely defending, because he is waiting for something. The chaos body runs flat out inside him, and the pain from the open wounds keeps him awake rather than slowing him down. Finally, the long saber gets flicked out of his grip and goes spinning away in an arc. Triumph flashes across Yu-un's face, and the flexible sword comes straight in at the throat, and he says it is over. And the panic goes out of my son's eyes, and something brilliant takes its place. He steps forward instead of back. He takes that certain kill thrust on his own left shoulder, on purpose. The blade goes through him and blood comes out the other side. He does not flinch, he clamps the muscle down on the steel to trap it, and his right hand closes on Yu-un's sword wrist like a set of iron pincers. Got you, he says, grinning with bloody teeth. And that smile puts a chill through a martial king. The suction erupts out of his palm. Yuan's face comes apart. His own chi and blood is going out of him toward this boy with no way to stop it, the way water leaves a punctured bladder. He tells him to get off, and it comes out closer to a plea than an order. My son's strength, which was nearly gone, comes back all at once on somebody else's account. Wild bull fist, mountain shaker. He does not even draw the fist back. He sets it against Yuan's chest and releases the inch force through it. That punch carries every scrap of his rage, and everything the chaos body just stole, like an old bull hitting a mountain. The thud of it hurts to hear. Yuan takes it in the chest like a sledgehammer and leaves the ground. He flies backward more than 10 meters like a kite with a cut string and hits a tree. 2 men could not reach around, and the trunk snaps. Dust goes up everywhere, and my son pulls the flexible sword out of his own shoulder and throws it away, breathing hard, eyes far too bright. Even a martial king, he says, gets hit when he suppresses his realm. Yuan comes up out of the wreckage on his own power with his neat white robe ruined with dirt and blood. He wipes his mouth, and every trace of contempt is gone, replaced by the specific rage of a man who has just been bitten by an ant. Good, he says. Very good. If he really were only at the chi and blood realm, he admits, he might have died here today. Then his voice goes hoarse and unpleasant. He did not expect that trash Song Mu to father a freak like this, and he wants to know whether the ability to drink another man's chi and blood is a demonic technique. My son's heart drops slightly. He can feel that the punch broke ribs and did not do anything fatal. A martial king's body has been tempered 1,000 times over, and even with the realm suppressed, its toughness sits far above anything ordinary. However, Yuan says, the game is finished. He straightens up while the red light in his eyes gets worse. He admits the boy is a genius, and adds that geniuses usually die first. His aura turns violent. He does not release the suppression, and he uses a martial king-grade explosive secret technique anyway, and his speed doubles. My son does not even see the movement. There is a blur and then a sharp wind against his face, and a dagger has appeared in Yuan's hand and is going for his heart. It is too fast. There is no dodging available. Am I going to die here? The unwillingness comes up in him like a wave, and the answer that comes with it is no. He cannot die here. His father is still waiting for him to come home for dinner. He still has to go to the starry sky and bring his mother back, and his road has barely started. He roars loud enough to tear something, bites the tip of his tongue, and spits out a mouthful of essence blood. The chaos vortex inside him feels its owner's will and starts to spin like a machine coming apart. And it makes a sound this time, a real one. Every stray scrap of chi and blood in the air, along with everything he stole from Yuan, gets compressed into one point and lit. Something in him snaps like a shackle. Chi and blood externalization. The innate realm. A faint red wave of chi opens around him and forces Yuan's dagger to a halt in midair. The system tells me my offspring has broken through in the heat of battle and been promoted to the innate realm, early stage. Then it synchronizes, congratulates me on having broken the limits of the human body, and promotes me to the martial emperor realm, early stage. He broke through and he blocked the killing blow, and Yuan is still a peak martial king. The dagger stalls against that wave of chi and then starts pushing through it anyway, a fraction at a time, sinking into my son's chest. Innate, Yuan says, and calls him a hybrid, and decides out loud that he cannot be allowed to live. At the exact moment the dagger point opens the skin, one word detonates inside Yuan's mind. Be gone. It does not come through his ears. It lands directly on his soul, and his head goes blank as though something enormous hit it. The dagger is a centimeter off my son's heart, and he cannot drive it any further, because the space around him is frozen. An invisible power like a sea has closed over 1,000 meters in every direction, and inside it a peak martial king is exactly as durable as an insect. He gets his eyes up with effort, and there is a figure walking through the air above him, not flying, stepping. 1 second at the horizon and the next standing between him and my son. I have no chi and blood fluctuation on me at all. The space around where I am standing bends slightly. Touching my son, I say. I reach out and take the wrist holding the dagger gently, and it comes apart in my hand. The dagger hits the ground. Yuan's scream starts and stops, because my other hand is already flat on the crown of his head. 20 years, Yuan, and you are still as disgusting as you ever were. I tell him the truth since he has earned that much. I was going to let him live a few more days so that he could watch my son become something. What he should never have done was carry the intent to kill onto this road. Since he did, he can go down and think about it. There is nothing in his eyes now but disbelief in the end of hope. He understands too late what has him. That is not a martial king's aura holding him still. That is divine thought made physical. Martial emperor, he thinks, and cannot make it fit. The martial emperor realm is the true summit of humankind, where divine thought fuses with heaven and earth and a man can kill with an intention. Song Mu was a martial king a few days ago. Nobody crosses that canyon in a few days. He is not going to get an answer. My palm closes slightly. In your next life, I tell him, Pay more attention. It is like crushing a block of tofu. The overbearing special commissioner of Hanam Great Base, Peak Marshal King Yuan, does not get a last word out before his head comes apart under my hand. The mess stops a meter out against a barrier I hold with divine thought, so not one drop of it reaches my son. The body sways and folds onto the road. A hero of his generation, finished without dignity, quickly and neatly. I shake off a hand that is not dirty and turn around, and the god of death goes wherever it goes. My son is standing there covered in his own blood and swaying, and everything cold in me converts into something else entirely. I ask Wu Ya whether he is all right, and I push a stream of very pure martial emperor chi and blood into him, which stops the bleeding and starts repairing the meridians he tore. He feels the warmth arrive, looks up at the father who just killed a man in a rage for him, and his eyes go hot. He shakes his head and gives me a weak, extremely bright smile, and tells me he is fine, and that he thinks he broke through to the innate realm. Silly boy, I tell him, and rub his head, and my voice does not come out as steady as I would like. A breakthrough is a good thing. Gambling his life for one is not going to happen again, because his father cannot survive that twice. Half an hour later, my son is asleep in a medical pod at Unjung Manor. The injuries looked appalling and did no fundamental damage, because Martial Emperor Chi and blood and a chaos body between them do not leave much for a doctor. Downstairs, I sit on the leather sofa with a cup of hot tea in no particular expression, and the city lord of Changnam Base kneels on my floor shaking like a leaf. Ban Hong watched Yu Un, the man the entire upper crust of this city bowed and scraped for, get crushed like a chick. His awe has arrived somewhere it cannot go beyond. Get up, I tell him. He is a fence sitter, and he still came to deliver the news at the last possible moment, and I will remember the favor. He thanks me for my mercy and gets up trembling, and his back stays bent and he does not look directly at me. I blow across the tea and ask whether the Wang family sent Yu Un. He does not consider lying. Yu Un was a guest elder of the Wang family, and apparently carried a grudge against me from 20 years back. The business with Wang Hang and Vamos handed him a respectable excuse to settle a private score. The Wang family, I say, and put the cup down and let something cold into it. Then that account is closed. I tell him to describe this Wang family of Hanam and what they are actually made of. He nods fast and turns grave. They cannot be underestimated. The Wang family is a top-tier noble house of Hanam Great Base, with enormous reach and roots that go a long way down. There are no fewer than 10 Martial King experts in the family. Yu Un was strong, and inside the Wang family he only ranked around the top 10. Then he drops his voice further, and the fear in it is real. Rumor says the Wang family keeps a 200-year-old old ancestor in permanent seclusion, and that the man stepped into the Martial Saint realm as long as 10 years ago. Martial Saint. I tap the tabletop once with a finger and listen to the sound. There are 8 realms of martial arts: physical body, chi, and blood. Innate, Grandmaster, Great Grandmaster, Martial King, Martial Emperor, Martial Saint. The Martial Emperor realm is where divine thought becomes material, where a man moves objects to kill and laces perception across an entire city. The Martial Saint realm is something else. Divine thought and heaven and earth origin chi fuse perfectly, and a gesture calls on the strength of the world itself. The body stops aging out. The lifespan runs to 500 years, and a Martial Saint can leave the atmosphere briefly and keep breathing in low orbit. It sounds like one rung. The distance between them is the distance between a cloud and the mud under it, and a single Martial Saint can put down 10 Martial Emperors without hurrying. Interesting, I say, and I am not afraid at all. My mouth goes up at the corner. A week ago, with only the Martial King realm, I would have had to think seriously about a Martial Saint, and possibly about taking my son and running. Today, I am a Martial Emperor. Given how this system behaves, all Song Wu has to do is climb a few more minor realms. Then whatever a Martial Saint is, it will be a one-punch problem. I stand up and pat Ban Hong's shoulder and tell him to keep this to himself. Yuan died in a vicious beast attack. Does he understand? He understands immediately and improves on it. Special Commissioner Yu was inspecting the wilderness, encountered a beast emperor, and died for his country. Go then. After he leaves, I stand at the window and look toward Hanam Great Base for a while. A Martial Saint. I hope the old bag of bones has kept himself in shape, so that he can at least take one punch before he goes. Upstairs in the medical pod, my son rolls over and mumbles that he wants braised pork. 2 months is nothing at all on a martial road, and Changnam Bay City stays calm through all of it, which is the strange part. The Wang family of Hanam behave as though Yuan and Wang Hung never existed, and no retaliation comes. I know what low pressure feels like before a storm. When they finally move, it will not be gentle. Behind Unjong Manor, the ground that used to serve as an arena is pitted and broken, and the alloy fencing around it carries saber marks that would worry a structural engineer. An after image moves through the trees fast enough that the falling leaves do not notice it going by. The boy is shirtless with a black iron battle saber in his hand, ghosting across the plum blossom stakes. Every stroke he makes is silent, and where the blade has been, the air ripples visibly afterward. That is saber intent. The void-breaking blade at major achievement. He shouts low, folds his body in midair in a way physics should object to, taps a falling leaf with his toes, and uses it to push himself another 3 feet higher, leaf-treading footwork at perfection. One stroke splits a boulder 3 meters tall down the middle, and the cut face is smooth enough to shave in. He sheathes the saber, lands, and lets out his breath. When he wipes his forehead, the face under his hand is not a boy's face anymore. The features have sharpened, and there is a decision living behind his eyes. 2 months, mountains of resources and daily torment from a martial emperor private tutor, and his realm has gone up like a launch to the late stage of the innate realm. If that number ever got out, it would rearrange the federal martial arts education establishment, because an ordinary genius needs at least a year for that same step. I watch from the second-floor balcony with a purple-clad teapot in my hand and let myself smile. The panel comes up when I want it, listing me as host, with Song Wu bound as my offspring. It puts his realm at the late stage of the innate realm and mine at the late stage of the martial emperor realm. My cultivation technique is the primal chaos one chi technique at perfection. Martial skills, the wild bull fist at perfection with the fist intent born, the void-breaking blade at perfection with the saber intent born, and leaf-treading footwork at perfection. Combat technique, microcontrol level. Late stage martial emperor. I close my fists on all of it. Without touching my bloodline energy at all, on divine thought alone, I could erase a martial emperor of my own rank without raising my voice. As for that martial saint old ancestor, the Wang family keeps in a box. My eyes narrow, and what goes through them is not worry. The manor security system chimes softly. I put my divine thought out and find Ban Hong at the main gate, anxious, pacing, and not quite daring to touch the bell. This old man is here again. In the living room, he holds his tea and sits on the front 2 inches of the sofa, all nerves and urgency. Over these 2 months, he has become a regular here. Caught between me and the Wang family, he has been walking on ice the whole time. He is smart enough to know that having offended one side, he had better hold very tightly to the other. He starts to say senior, and I wave the formalities away and ask whether this is about the vicious beast outside the base. He smiles bitterly, produces a very detailed electronic map, and projects it over the coffee table. For 2 months, the beasts around the base have been behaving worse and worse. High-level animals that belong deep in the mountains keep turning up on the outskirts, and several mercenary squads have already been hit. The martial arts college entrance exam is half a month out, and this year the exam draws candidates not only from Changnam, but from several neighboring satellite cities, all of them gathering here. If something happens at the exam site, or if a beast tide arrives, he says while wiping his forehead, then his head as city lord is a minor loss, and the real tragedy is the children losing their futures. I look at the map, which is covered in red dots that all converge toward one place, and I nod. My son sits that exam too, and I have no intention of allowing accidents. He tells me their drones finally located the source after some very expensive reconnaissance, and he points at a deep red patch 300 miles out from Changnam Base. Deep in the Naka Mountains, there's a newly risen Beast King, a mutated thundercloud tiger. Energy analysis puts its strength at least at the level of a peak martial king, and it has half a foot across the threshold of a beast emperor. It has been gathering every herd within reach, and something large is being brewed out there. A mutated thundercloud tiger, I say, and rub my chin. For the Changnam base of today, a peak martial king beast is a civic catastrophe. From where I sit, it is roughly 1 slap. Fine, I tell him, and stand up and take the map. He is so relieved he thanks me twice. I leave the base and step up into the air, trailing a white wake at altitude on a straight line for the Naka Mountains. They are named for the red miasma that covers them year-round, which is as pretty and as fatal as a sunset.